Chapter 195. Pucci. The sharp dagger pointlessly pierced through the girl's abdomen, leaving a bloody hole in her body. The hideous wound was a mess of flesh and blood. Intense pain instantly spread throughout her body. Young Lady Maple couldn't bear it and fell to the ground. She rolled and crawled a few times before stopping. "Yo, Kakuzu, you're finally done." Haydn looked at Kakuzu and waved his hand, indicating that he was here. However, he was ignored by Kakuzu, who didn't even look at him. This made Haydn very angry, and he cursed Kakuzu for burning the bridge after crossing the river. "How do you feel, Maple?" Kakuzu's face was expressionless as he looked at the half-dead Maple. His voice wasn't as gentle as before. Instead, it was cold and filled with killing intent. "I'm not asking you how painful your wounds are. I'm asking you how it feels to fall from heaven to hell. Is it unforgettable?" Kakuzu's voice was filled with killing intent as he looked at the half-dead Maple. Kakuzu's voice was filled with killing intent. At this time, Haydn put on the Akatsuki uniform again and stood beside Kakuzu. Why did you do this?" Maple looked at Kakuzu in disbelief, and her small face was full of shock. The Kakuzu in front of her was completely different from the previous Kakuzu. He was covered with coldness from the depths of hell, and his temperament was isolated from the world. "Do you feel pain?" Kakuzu glanced at Maple faintly, and the corner of his mouth raised a smile, and he said indifferently, "It seems that you finally understand how I felt. This pain of falling from heaven to hell was given to me by the people of Waterfall Village. If I kill you now, as the hope of Waterfall Village, you will fall. They will also understand the feeling of falling from heaven to hell, and they will never be able to let it go." Kakuzu's tone was extremely harsh. Decades ago, he received a mission from the higher-ups of Waterfall Village to assassinate the first Hokage. After Kakuzu arrived in Konoha, he fought the first Hokage, but he didn't expect to be defeated by the first Hokage's would release. After several turns, he finally escaped from the tiger's mouth and returned to Waterfall Village. After returning to the village, Kakuzu faced a heavy punishment for failing the mission and was mercilessly imprisoned in prison. The ninja who gambled his life for the village was cruelly treated. Since then, Kakuzu was pushed far away from hell, so he escaped from prison with a very strong hatred. A little brat will always be a little brat. I can't understand Lord's feelings. Looking at the unconscious Feng, Kakudo curled his lips, and the sadness in his eyes disappeared. He said to Fei Duan, "Take her away. This way, the mission will be considered completed." Without even looking at Maple, Kakuzu turned and left. 7 days later in the Rain Village. The first group to return was naturally Dustless and Conan, the second was Kakuzu and Haydn, and the last was Uchiha Itachi and Kisame. Under Pain's force, although Sasori and Deidara still had contradictions, they successfully formed a new team. All the wild-tailed beasts were collected. Dustless thought that the matter was over, but he didn't expect that Uzumaki Nagato's brain was twitching, and he continued to make money. According to Pain, it was to gather a lot of money for future use. However, whether it was Dustless or the other members of the Akatsuki, they all scoffed at Pain's statement. Therefore, after the collection of tailed beasts was completed, in addition to the Jinchuriki of the major ninja villages, the members of the Akatsuki began to embark on the task of earning extra money, accepting various tasks all day long to earn a lot of money. This work took a few more years. Uzumaki Naruto finally graduated. It's really hard, but this day has finally come. In a dark room unknown to others, Dustless looked at Zetsu in front of him, nodded with satisfaction, and breathed a sigh of relief. The day he had been waiting for finally came. Just yesterday, Uzumaki Naruto finally graduated successfully and became a genin, and so did Uchiha Sasuke. But Uzumaki Naruto's ability to resist attacks is really strong. I controlled Kyuubi to attack Konoha twice, and that kid could still survive countless taunts. It's really a miracle. Dustless was speechless, and he couldn't help but look at Uzumaki Naruto in a new light. His powerful positive energy made Dustless ashamed. According to his expectations, even if Uzumaki Naruto explodes with Kyuubi's power, it's not impossible to destroy Konoha. That kid is really strong. Even in the face of the taunts of the whole village, he survived. In the past few years, White Zetsu secretly spied on Uzumaki Naruto according to Dustless's instructions. It can be said that he witnessed Uzumaki Naruto's childhood. How about Uchiha Sasuke? Then thinking of his third brother who lived in the shadow of Uchiha Itachi, Dustless suddenly asked with a little expectation in his tone. Dustless, Sama, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. This time, Black Zetsu, who never spoke much in front of him, said, Uchiha Sasuke's performance is ordinary. He lives in Itachi's shadow all day long, training himself almost like hell. That's really hard work. Dustless smiled faintly. It seems that Kid hates Uchiha Itachi deeply, but if he knew that he was the one who killed Uchiha Itachi and forced the Uchiha clan to perish, what kind of expression would he have? Uchiha Sasuke, Uzumaki Naruto, and a girl named Haruno Sakura were all assigned to the same class. Their teacher is an elite jonin named Kakashi, who recently took the task of escorting an old man to the Wave Country. White Zetsu reported truthfully, he didn't dare to hide anything, and continued. Also recently, the leader of Konoha's root division, Shimura Danzo, has frequently contacted Orochimaru, the Sand-Hidden Village, and other villages. The specific purpose is unknown. Don't mind the clown. Dustless waved his hand, indicating that there is no need to worry about this kind of trivial matter. He just smiled casually. It's unrealistic for a floater to shake the world. Chapter 196. Shimura Danzo's dream of being the Hokage will never be extinguished. As long as he doesn't become the Hokage, or if he doesn't die, his dream of being the Hokage will always burn in his heart, driving away his reason until the day he becomes the Hokage. But this is a good opportunity to take advantage of it. With a cold smile on his face, Dustless secretly despised Shimura Danzo. He's afraid that he wants to use this Chunin exam as an opportunity to attack Sandame's prestige. It's best if he can pull Sandame down from the position of Hokage and replace him. Dustless, Sama, you mean? White Zetsu looked at Dustless with a puzzled face. Black Zetsu was silent, pretending not to know anything, and just quietly waiting for Dustless's explanation. Dustless just smiled faintly and didn't say much. After a moment of contemplation, he suddenly formed a seal with one hand, and the ground suddenly cracked, and 3 rotten coffins suddenly emerged from the depths of the ground. Sandame has lived for most of his life, and he knows too many things. He's an antique from decades ago, and his time has come to an end. There are many people who want him dead, so we don't need to do anything. Dustless quietly looked at the 3 coffins in front of him, and he sneered again and again. The 3 coffins in front of him were the first Hokage, second Hokage, and fourth Hokage. In fact, when he attacked Konoha 12 years ago, Dustless secretly transferred the bodies of Hashirama and Tobirama. At that time, although Hashirama's Edo Tensei body was destroyed by him using Yin-Yang release, his soul was not sealed. The same was true for Tobirama. As long as he used Edo Tensei again, he could still summon the 2 of them. As for Minato, he was directly killed by Dustless, and his body was perfectly preserved until now. Is it possible that Dustless, Sama means to give Orochimaru the bodies of the Hokage? Black Zetsu immediately understood Dustless's meaning. Orochimaru's grievances with Sandame are known to the world. I'm afraid that after getting these precious corpses, he will immediately attack Konoha during the Chunin exam. The grudges between Orochimaru and Sandame are not shallow. The 2 can even be said to be irreconcilable existences. If there is an opportunity to kill Sandame, he will not let it go. Indeed, let Orochimaru help me kill Sandame-sama. There is no need for us to do it ourselves. Dustless nodded slightly and admitted indifferently, then immediately frowned. Orochimaru was also a scheming person. If these 3 coffins were sent to his door like this, even if he was stupid, he would know that someone was cheating him. Because the corpses of Shodame, Nidame, and Yondame have completely disappeared since Dustless attacked Konoha. Suddenly jumping to the door of Otogekure, Orochimaru was suspicious. It's good to pass them to Orochimaru through Kabuto's hands. After pondering for a while, Black Zetsu suggested, Kabuto is Orochimaru's spy. We can pass the corpses of the past Hokage to him through his hands. Orochimaru should not be suspicious if it's from his trusted hands. This is a good idea. It's worth a try. Dustless nodded. Orochimaru really trusted Kabuto and regarded him as his right-hand man. It's better to give the corpses of the past Hokage to Orochimaru than Dustless himself. Put all the corpses of the past Hokage in Danzo's root. With the corner of his mouth raised in disdain, Wuxia sneered. In this way, the origin of the corpses can be clearly explained. Orochimaru knew Shimura Danzo's way of doing things, and he knew that Shimura Danzo was the one who secretly hid the corpses of Hokage and used them to secretly study forbidden jutsu. Orochimaru is eager for the abilities of Shodame and Nidame, who are deified by the world. Now with the help of Minato's corpse, I think he will completely tear apart Konoha's face. He can't wait to implement his plan of destruction. Shimura Danzo is also trying to be clever, and in the end, he only benefited Tsunade. Dustless said. Orochimaru's attack on Konoha was not worried at all. Instead, it was Shimura Danzo who led the wolf into the house. The so-called Chunin exam was nothing more than a blow to Sandame's prestige. As a result, Orochimaru, a ferocious snake, bit Sandame to death, and Konoha itself suffered great losses. And in the end, the person who got the throne of the fifth Hokage was Tsunade. Zetsu, send the corpses of the three to the root. Remember to do it quickly and without leaving any traces. Remember not to let others find out that it has something to do with us. Dustless waved his hand at Zetsu with a dignified tone. Understood. Dustless, Sama. Zetsu nodded, and then his body sank into the depths of the ground. The three coffins Dustless summoned before also disappeared. Obviously, they were taken to Konoha by White Zetsu. Zetsu's action was fast enough. Of course, he didn't have the courage to disobey Dustless's order. That night, he sent the corpses of the past Hokage to the root. And in just a few days, Kabuto, who was secretly responsible for contacting Shimura Danzo, accidentally found the corpses of the past Hokage, and without any hesitation, he stole them and gave them to Orochimaru. This was also the reason why the QB broke out again a few years ago, and the root department was destroyed on a large scale. Otherwise, with Kabuto's strength, he wouldn't have been able to steal anything from the root department. After Orochimaru got the corpses of the first, second, and third Hokage, he was like a treasure. Almost all day long, he worked hard in the laboratory. Just like Dustless thought at first, he suspected that someone was tricking him, and even guessed that Kabuto had been bribed, but as time passed, Orochimaru's suspicion faded. Kabuto had no reason to betray him, and the corpses of the past Hokage were also real. Orochimaru also felt that Kabuto's origin was reasonable. He knew Shimura Danzo's ambition. As Dustless expected, Orochimaru began to plan a sneak attack on Konoha in detail. He was determined to wait until the Chunin exam to completely wipe out Konoha's ninja village. Chapter 197. Since Orochimaru got the corpses of the Hokage, he carried out a series of crazy experiments, such as human experiments, cell experiments, and the so-called curse experiments. Everything related to the Hokage's corpses was forcibly added by Orochimaru. Even if most of them were insignificant, they couldn't resist Orochimaru's enthusiasm. In Orochimaru's laboratory, there were a lot of green liquid gas, all of which were his various experimental bodies. Everyone couldn't help but sigh at Orochimaru's dedication to the Hokage's corpses. Orochimaru-sama, the fourth Kazekage of the Sand-Hidden Village, hopes to form an alliance with us to launch a sneak attack on Konoha. Next to Orochimaru, Kabuto reported the current situation respectfully. In addition to being undercover in Konoha, he usually took time to come back and see. Of course, this was also Orochimaru's idea. Fourth Kazekage Raza is really sensitive. Orochimaru, who was doing experiments, was slightly startled. He stopped the task at hand and sneered. As a close neighbor of Konoha, the Sand-Hidden Village was naturally very afraid of the powerful Fire Country. Maybe one day Konoha would be unhappy and take it out on them. Although this was just a simple assumption, it also showed the Sand-Hidden Village's uneasiness. So you mean to reject them? Kabuto asked cautiously, especially when he saw the distorted human bodies on the test bench. He couldn't help but have goosebumps all over his body. Even if he had seen this scene countless times, he couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. Orochimaru was a temperamental and unscrupulous person. Maybe one day he would be the one lying there. Orochimaru just glanced at Kabuto's unnatural expression and said disdainfully, "The fourth Kazekage overestimated the power of the Sand-Hidden Village and underestimated the strength of Otogekure." Without obtaining the corpses of the previous Hokage, Orochimaru did intend to form an alliance with the Sand Village. But now that he has obtained the corpses of the three Hokages, he can use the Edo Tensei to resurrect them, so forming an alliance with the Sand Village is meaningless. Refuse. Orochimaru glanced at Kabuto and said cruelly, Why should I refuse? Isn't this a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to kill the fourth Kazekage? At that time, I will replace the fourth Kazekage and mix into Konoha. Sarutobi-sensei will die in my hands. Don't you think it's a blessing? Masters should feel gratified to see their disciples surpass themselves. Orochimaru's pale face was full of killing intent, and he said with an extremely cold smile. His hoarse voice was very harsh. Not to mention being stared at by Orochimaru, just hearing his incomparably cold voice gave people an indescribable sense of oppression, which made people have a mental breakdown. Orochimaru-sama is right. Yakushi nodded. After obtaining the corpses of the previous Hokage, the Sand Village's alliance wasn't that important anymore. Killing the fourth Kazekage wasn't a difficult task. He could wait until the Chunin exam to ambush him. Moreover, Orochimaru can borrow the power of the Sand-Hidden Village, including the tailed beasts of the Sand-Hidden Village. With all these reasons combined, it's better for the Kazekage to die. Orochimaru-sama. At this moment, Orochimaru's voice sounded. He looked up and saw the pale-faced boy kneeling on the ground and bowing his head respectfully. This boy was Kimimaro, one of Orochimaru's confidants. You came at the right time. Seeing Kimimaro's arrival, Orochimaru smiled and looked at Kimimaro with satisfaction. His snake eyes flashed with pity. The power of Shikatsu Myaku was known to the world. Kimimaro should have been the most suitable vessel for reincarnation, but he was suffering from an incurable disease. What do you think of my plan? Orochimaru looked at Kimimaro expectantly and asked with interest. Kimimaro wasn't only strong, but his thinking ability was also good. Kimimaro's eyes flashed with hesitation, and after thinking for a while, he frowned and said, "The plan can't keep up with the changes, the faster the better. I suggest that we immediately use the negotiation as an excuse to lure the fourth Kazekage out of the Sand-Hidden Village, and then join forces to kill him." It makes sense. Orochimaru nodded when he heard this. If he waited until the day of the Chunin exam, it might be too late. Only by killing the Kazekage now can he use his identity as a Kazekage to maximize his value. 2 days later, I will send someone to lure the fourth Kazekage out of the Sand-Hidden Village, and we will besiege him. Looking at Kimimaro's appreciative eyes, Orochimaru said with a gloomy voice. The murderous intent in his snake eyes was particularly obvious. He didn't dare to say that he would fight with Kimimaro alone. After all, he was a Kage. In the rain-hidden village, in a dark room with dirty lights, Dustless was leisurely lying on the soft sofa. Frankly speaking, ever since he entered Akatsuki these past few years, he had never been leisurely. He was busy all day long with the so-called mission. This was the so-called working to earn extra money. Of course, Kakuzu, who loved money as much as his life, was more than happy to do this. He was the most hard-working one. Dustless-sama, Orochimaru has sent his men to contact the Kazekage, but he doesn't seem to intend to form an alliance with the Kazekage. Instead, he secretly took a few confidants to ambush the Kazekage in advance. It seems that he wants to attack the Kazekage. White Zetsu stared at Dustless, who was lying on the sofa, and seriously reported the situation of Orochimaru. He didn't dare to hide anything. Dustless just nodded silently and frowned. He didn't expect Orochimaru to kill the Kazekage at this time. Fine, let him be. He's helping me by doing this. With a smile on his face, Dustless was no longer entangled. His eyes flashed with a dazzling light. The Sandaime knew too many secrets. Uchiha Itachi's condition for joining the Akatsuki was that he wasn't allowed to attack Konoha. Now, using Orochimaru's hand to kill the third Hokage is the most appropriate. Chapter 198. Orochimaru's plan was being carried out like a hot tea. This old guy really had the nature of an ambitious person. He took one step at a time. He evolved the plan until it was watertight, then he decided to implement it. It was normal for him to be so cautious. After all, the fourth Tsuchikage of the Sand Village was also a Kage-level powerhouse. After a series of intense preparations, Orochimaru finally decided to kill the Yondaime-sama Kazekage and replace him during the Chunin exam. Land of Wind. Sand-Hidden Village. Endless wind and sand covered the sky and covered the earth. Boundless hurricanes whistled, and the ground was a dry desert. There was no sign of life. It's no wonder that the sand-hidden village would attack Konoha. Compared to Konoha's ninja village with superior geographical location, convenient transportation, warm climate, and fertile land, the sand-hidden village's territory is simply a stone in a latrine pit. In the cool valley, two groups of people could be clearly seen gathering, and their clothes were obviously different. Obviously, they belonged to two different forces. One of them was naturally the sand-hidden village, and the other was naturally Orochimaru's Otoge cure. It seems that they are all here. Gazing at the flow of people in the valley below, two lonely figures could be clearly seen standing outside. They were wearing black windbreakers embroidered with red clouds and bamboo hats with bells tied to them. Occasionally, when a breeze blew past, there would be a clear and melodious sound. The two figures stood above the valley. One of them was a handsome young man who looked like he was only 18 or 19 years old. The other person's appearance was really unflattering. He had nepenthes on his shoulders, and he was also a black and white yin-yang. It was Dustless and Zetsu. Now Dustless is 26 years old, but his appearance is around 17 or 18 years old. As for the specific reason, only God knows. During this period, Otsutsuki Hagoromo also asked Dustless the reason, but Dustless really didn't know. According to his estimation, it should be that after one's strength reaches a certain level, even if they can't reach the exaggerated level of immortality, it shouldn't be a problem to maintain their appearance. Yondaime Kazekage is unusually calm. He dared to meet Orochimaru so easily. I don't know if he believes in his own strength, or if he's sure that Orochimaru won't harm him. White Zetsu's surprised voice sounded, and then he looked at the Kazekage frivolously. The contempt in his eyes was even more obvious, especially when he saw the Kazekage's entourage shaking their heads. Orochimaru is an S-class ninja. How can he be a kind person? Black Zetsu was also speechless. Yondaime Kazekage has a lot of followers. Most of them are Chunin, there are too few Jonin, and although Orochimaru's side only has a few subordinates, without exception, all of them are strong. All of them were once reincarnated bodies that Orochimaru spent a lot of effort to plunder. A pitiful person must have something to hate. Dustless curled his lips and looked at Yondaime Kazekage sarcastically. This guy is definitely not a good person. Dustless felt that it was a pity that he didn't kill this guy during the Third World War. Dustless's eyes moved slightly, and he saw Orochimaru's subordinates in the valley below, and his eyes flashed with appreciation. Orochimaru's subordinates are good. All of them have Kekei Genkai, and they belong to the rare and extremely powerful kind. Dustless nodded, and his eyes stayed on Kimimaro and the others, but Black Zetsu looked at Kimimaro with interest, as if he had discovered a prehistoric creature, and his face was full of curiosity. Orochimaru, we can talk about cooperation in detail a few days before the attack on Konoha. It's a bit early to talk about this now. Yondaime Kazekage stared at Orochimaru's snake eyes and frowned slightly. There was still some time before the Chunin exam, and it was indeed early to talk about this. Kazekage-sama, there are some things that need to be said in advance. Orochimaru's pale face raised a smile, and there was a beast-like gaze hidden in the depths of his snake eyes. Yondaime Kazekage frowned slightly and looked at Orochimaru's subordinates behind him, and he nodded and chuckled. As expected of one of the Sannin, Orochimaru, your subordinates are all phoenixes. After saying that, Yondaime Kazekage walked towards Orochimaru, and his demeanor was quite amiable, giving a feeling of a spring breeze, as if they were brothers who hadn't seen each other for many years. They are indeed very good. Orochimaru nodded and accepted all the praise of Yondaime Kazekage, because this is an undeniable fact. His subordinates are all top-notch experts, and they can't even enter his eyes, and they aren't even qualified to be experimental subjects. Seeing Yondaime Kazekage striding towards him, Orochimaru's mouth curled into a cold smile. They are naturally very good. If they weren't good, how would I dare to ambush and kill Kazekage-sama? Wouch! After saying that, Orochimaru's body shuttled like lightning, crossing layers of space, and almost instantly appeared in front of Yondaime Kazekage, and under Yondaime Kazekage's horrified gaze, Orochimaru waved his sword of Kusanagi, and the cold light directly swept towards Yondaime Kazekage. Pucci! Yondaime Kazekage's abdomen was clearly visible, and although he avoided Orochimaru's attack, he was still injured. Enduring the pain in his abdomen, Yondaime Kazekage retreated for a distance. Kazekage-sama. Seeing that the Kazekage was injured by Orochimaru, The sand shinobi who came with Orochimaru hurriedly rushed over and looked at the wound on the Kazekage's abdomen worriedly. At the same time, they didn't forget to glare at Orochimaru with anger. "You're still alive, worthy of being the Kage of the village." Orochimaru nodded slightly, and a cold smile appeared on his face as he said coldly, "Now I will send you to hell." With Orochimaru's order, the ninjas behind him suddenly rushed out, like wolves in a flock of sheep, killing the sand ninjas. The situation was almost in a state of destruction. Chapter 199. Orochimaru smiled as he looked at Kazekage, who was covered in cold sweat. His expression became even colder and indifferent, and his eyes were as sharp as a knife without any emotion. "What do you want, Orochimaru? Do you think you can have peace after offending the sand and Otoge cure?" Suppressing the stinging pain in his chest, the Kazekage glared at Orochimaru. His eyes flashed with a sinister light, like a dying beast. His eyes were filled with hysterical madness. It's not difficult to see that if he wasn't limited by his injuries, the Kazekage would definitely fight Orochimaru to the death. "Haven't you figured out the situation yet? No wonder the sand village is in a mess in your hands." Kimimaro stepped forward indifferently, and his tone was emotionless. He looked at the pale Kazekage indifferently. His emotionless eyes were no different from looking at a dead man. "Bastard! How dare you boast so shamelessly? Didn't Orochimaru, that old bastard, teach you how to respect your elders? Get out of my way!" Seeing Kimimaro ridiculing him, the Kazekage's face immediately turned pale, and he shouted at Kimimaro with a gloomy voice. At the same time, he released his murderous aura, trying to crush Kimimaro's will. "The more you live, the more you're regressing. You're actually fighting against a kid, and—" Orochimaru sneered at the struggling Kazekage, and then looked at Kimimaro, who was bathed in Kazekage's murderous aura, and patted him on the shoulder with a hopeless look. "You want to defeat this child with murderous aura? You're too naive." Shaking his head, Orochimaru's contempt became more obvious as he mocked. "Kazekage-sama, your idea is too ridiculous. It's a pity that the heavens are jealous of such a talent. Otherwise, this kid's future potential will definitely surpass you and me." "Humph, so what, Orochimaru, I will kill you." With a cold snort, the Kazekage stood up shakily, and his body was like a willow branch dancing in the wind. Not to mention killing Orochimaru, it would be a miracle if he could stand up. Even so, due to the strong hatred in his heart, he stood up and vowed to kill Orochimaru. "Then you'll have to step over my dead body." Kimimaro's eyes were filled with endless cold light as he said firmly. At the same time, he stood in front of Orochimaru. Countless sharp bones drilled out of his body, not to mention killing him. It was extremely difficult to get close to him. No one could treat the bones that were as hard as steel and as fast as blades as air. Staring at the Kazekage, Kimimaro's eyes were filled with coldness. Orochimaru was the greatest meaning of his existence, and the person in front of him wanted to kill the god in his heart. 10 finger-piercing bullets. He threw his hands forward with all his strength, and small bones shot out from the front of his fingers, whistling out like bullets. The appearance looked ordinary and fragile, but it made the Kazekage frown slightly. He felt that Kimimaro's Kekkai Genkai was extraordinary, and he quickly made a defense. Immediately, he controlled the thick sand to gather in front of him, forming an indestructible circular sand shield, firmly blocking the destruction of the chi ray. Bang bang bang! The fingerbone whistled through the air and landed on the shield, causing sand and dust to splatter everywhere. It left a deep imprint on the shield, but it was unable to penetrate the sturdy and solid defense. "Is this guy from the Kagaya clan?" Looking gloomily at Kimimaro, who was covered in barbs like a hedgehog, Yondaime was surprised. The story of Kagaya clan's large-scale attack on the Mist Village was known all over the world. The sad thing was that the Kagaya clan was strong enough, but the Mist was stronger. In the end, the Kagaya clan was killed by the Mist, and the Kagaya clan was annihilated. This person who could use the corpse bone pulse was obviously a fish that escaped the net. Yes, this child is the Kagaya clan's orphan. Orochimaru nodded and admitted. There was no need to hide it, especially with this person who was about to die. The Kagaya clan was a fighting clan, and the whole clan was like a wild beast. They were crazy, and they attacked the Mist Village without fear of death. So what, a mere Kagaya clan can't make a big wave? Holding back the boiling anger in his heart, Raza's chakra began to rage as he stared at Orochimaru behind Kimimaro, and his killing intent broke out uncontrollably. Magnet release. Golden sand burial. Countless sand on the ground seemed to be driven by magic as it wrapped around Raza, Orochimaru, and Kimimaro. The momentum was monstrous, almost covering the entire sky. Boundless sand surged over like a flowing river, endless and unending. Moreover, the thickness of this sand was obviously not ordinary. Countless metals were shining within it. Worthy of being the Kage of the village, he's still so brave even when injured. Dustless and Zetsu were watching the battle from the top of the canyon. Seeing the Kazekage use a large-scale magnet release, Zetsu was amazed. He seemed to be surprised by the Kazekage's vitality. That's his full blow, and it can be regarded as a dying light. At that time, Orochimaru won't even need to do anything. Maybe if you don't try so hard, you might still be able to run to the sand-hidden village to inform them. You're just an ignorant fool. Looking at the Kazekage fighting in the canyon below, Zetsu's voice was extremely hoarse. It wasn't difficult to hear his disdain for the Kazekage's approach. The outcome is decided, let's go, Zetsu. After watching the battle for a while, Dustless chose to leave. His whole body was covered in a golden luster as he disappeared into the sky. As Zetsu said before, the fall of the Kazekage was an unsolvable situation. Since the goal was achieved, there was no need to waste time and effort here. Seeing Dustless disappear, Zetsu also went deep into the ground, and the sky was calm again. Only the bloody massacre was still going on in the valley. Chapter 200. Time flies. It's been 3 days since Orochimaru assassinated the Kazekage. Things have developed according to Orochimaru's plan. He temporarily replaced the 4th Tsuchikage and lurked in the sand-hidden village. With the help of the sand-hidden village, he perfected his Konoha collapse plan. At the same time, he mobilized the sand-hidden village's elite ninjas to attack Konoha. Orochimaru's plan was in full swing, and soon it took shape. On the other side, Team 7, who were carrying out the mission in the Land of Wave, finally completed the mission and were on their way back to Konoha. After this battle, Team 7 finally became a little bit better. At least Kakashi thought so. Whether it was Uzumaki Naruto or Uchiha Sasuke, they obviously matured a lot after this mission. The night sky was particularly peaceful, and several figures could be clearly seen around the campfire. Looking closely, it was Team 7 led by Kakashi. However, because it will take a lot of time to return to Konoha, and there was no hotel around, the 4 of them had no choice but to sleep in the wild. Fortunately, everyone was a ninja. It was inevitable that unexpected things would happen during the mission, so they all brought tents and compressed biscuits with them. However, as the saying goes, there are exceptions to everything. Kakashi, Sensei once said that we are in the same team. We should help each other and pay attention to teamwork. So hurry up and give me some of your food. Lord Naruto's stomach is already growling, and he needs your help. The kid with golden hair and a few whiskers on his face looked expectantly at the black-haired boy in front of him, but he was miserably ignored. He immediately shouted angrily, "Sasuke, I'm talking about you." There was no doubt that the blonde boy was Uzumaki Naruto, and the black-haired boy was Uchiha Sasuke. Uchiha Sasuke just looked at the indignant Uzumaki Naruto with disdain, then looked at Uzumaki Naruto's belly, and sneered contemptuously, "Often, a ninja's duel depends on strength, but you really need to rely on your belly to fight. Naruto, you are indeed the #1 ninja in the school." "What did you say?" Uzumaki Naruto was like a cat whose tail was stepped on. He stood up and stared at Uchiha Sasuke with his dark blue pupils. Staring at his unmoved face, Naruto felt particularly annoyed, and he couldn't wait to kick him. "Naruto, Sasuke is right. Accidents often happen when ninjas perform tasks. You must be prepared in advance." Kakashi took out a bag of food from his backpack and handed it to Uzumaki Naruto, and said earnestly, "The world of ninja is very cruel. There is no morality. You have to be prepared for a rainy day." I understand, Kakashi-sensei." Uzumaki Naruto picked up the food and ate it directly, ignoring Kakashi's words. He didn't even look at him. Obviously, he didn't listen to him. "Brat, you don't understand human language." Kakashi smiled bitterly when he saw this. He knew that Uzumaki Naruto treated his words as a fart. He shook his head and was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. After all, some things need to be done by himself. He just continued to eat compressed food to replenish the physical strength consumed during the day. The atmosphere quickly fell into silence, and only the sound of food being eaten could be heard. Uchiha Sasuke was extremely fast and neat no matter what he did. After quickly eating dinner, he ran to the distant pool. A training madman like him would train himself whenever he had a chance. Needless to say, he knew what he was doing. Sasuke. Haruno Sakura put down the lunchbox and looked at Sasuke's back. Her eyes were full of complicated emotions. Her painstakingly conceived communication plan was ruined. What a desperate little brat. Kakashi couldn't help but frown when he saw this. Everything should be paid attention to the combination of work and rest, and the dangerous profession of ninja is no exception. It's good to strengthen the training, but if Uchiha Sasuke works so hard, he may go crazy and fall into evil ways. Orochimaru betrayed Konoha because he pursued the limit of ninjutsu too much. In a trance, Kakashi also saw such a shadow in Uchiha Sasuke. Sakura. Look after Naruto. I'll go and see. Standing up, Kakashi told Sakura. Naruto's IQ is really not to be complimented. He always does something unexpected. Haruno Sakura nodded obediently, indicating that she understood, and immediately watched Kakashi leave. Fire release. Great fireball technique. A blazing and huge fireball rose from the pitch-black water surface, heating up the water in the pond. White steam rose from it, and it seemed to be quite powerful. Damn, it's still too weak. I'm afraid I can't defeat that man in my life. Uchiha Sasuke's eyes were full of dissatisfaction. His young fists were clenched tightly, with a lot of sweat. The unwillingness on his small face was obvious. The red light in his eyes was surging, ferocious and scary. The man in his mouth was naturally Uchiha Itachi. His murderous aura broke out uncontrollably. You've done a good job, Sasuke. Your dead parents will be able to rest in peace after seeing your hard work and the results you have now. Kakashi's voice came from behind. Uchiha Sasuke just turned his head, showing a cold face. Compared to that man, I'm still too far away. For him, I'm not even an ant. Don't worry, Sasuke. You can definitely surpass Uchiha Itachi in the future. Seeing Uchiha Sasuke so obsessed with hatred, Kakashi could only persuade him in another way, trying to reduce Uchiha Sasuke's obsession with Uchiha Itachi. Hearing this, Uchiha Sasuke calmed down, and the chakra flow on his body disappeared. With a little smile on his mouth, his small face was particularly strange under the moonlight. Uchiha Itachi? I didn't target that man a long time ago. He's just an insignificant person who will be killed by me in the future. My target is the existence that even Uchiha Itachi can only look up to. Uchiha Dustless. Chapter 201. Under the reflection of the clear pool water, Uchiha Sasuke's ferocious little face was particularly horrifying. His face overflowed with cold air, and his whole body floated with a frightening red light, like a ghost in hell, the root of evil. Even Kakashi's heart trembled fiercely. Sasuke, who told you about that man? Kakashi asked in a deep voice. Obviously, he was surprised that Sasuke knew about Uchiha Dustless, and it seemed that he knew a lot about him. There's no need to be so nervous. One day in the future, I will definitely stand on the head of Uchiha Dustless, and revive the Uchiha family. His eyes were shining. Uchiha Sasuke's voice was sonorous and powerful, and his voice was very loud, full of confidence. Compared to the former Uchiha Sasuke who gave people a feeling of simple and conceited, at this moment, he was reborn, like a dazzling star in the dark night, like a peerless talent. Of course, all of this was ridiculous in Kakashi's eyes. Even though he was very optimistic about Uchiha Sasuke, at this moment, he couldn't help but be shocked by his absurd idea. There is a limit to dreaming and fantasizing. Everything must be based on evidence. If it's out of line, then it's a complete idiot. At this moment, in Kakashi's eyes, Uchiha Sasuke had the attribute of an idiot. Who is Uchiha Dustless? He's almost deified by the world, the strongest ninja standing at the top of the pyramid. Especially when the old man Inoki revealed that he joined the Akatsuki, Uchiha Dustless's prestige reached the peak. even higher than Uchiha Madara and Hashirama Senju. The reason is that Uchiha Madara and Hashirama are dead, but Uchiha Dustless is still alive. Sasuke, I advise you not to think about those useless and unrealistic dreams. Do the things in front of you well, and become stronger with peace of mind. Don't think about reaching the sky in one step. Kakashi coldly looked at Uchiha Sasuke, who was immersed in his dream, and said with a warning tone, I can tell you for sure that Uchiha Dustless, your big brother, is completely dead. Gazing at Uchiha Sasuke's yearning look, Kakashi vowed. Out of helplessness, he could only deceive Uchiha Sasuke. He didn't want Uchiha Sasuke to live in the shadow of Spotless, just like him. Almost all the geniuses of the same generation as Dustless lived in his shadow. Dead. Uchiha Sasuke froze, looked at Kakashi in disbelief, and then mocked. Kakashi, you don't think I'm a 3-year-old child, do you? Do you think I'll believe this kind of thing just based on your one-sided words? This is what that damned man told me himself. At the mention of that damn man, Sasuke's little face twisted, as terrible as a devil, with an aura of isolation. Sure enough, it's Itachi. Hearing this, Kakashi's eyes flashed with understanding. The news that Dustless is not dead is only in the ears of the major ninja villages. Uchiha Sasuke can know so much about Dustless's deeds, obviously. His brother Uchiha Itachi, who joined the Akatsuki, told him. At the same time, Kakashi also felt very troubled. He could see the madness in Uchiha Sasuke's eyes. If he doesn't contain the crazy and restless thoughts in his heart, maybe he will really do something crazy in the future. Sasuke, you will train with me in the future, and I will guide you. After that, I will be your sensei. With a flash of determination in his eyes, Kakashi decided to put Uchiha Sasuke, an uncertain factor, by his side. He could feel the unprecedented haze and hatred in Uchiha Sasuke's heart. If he doesn't stop in time, he will either be strangled or fall off the cliff to his death. Sensei? You? Uchiha Sasuke was stunned at first, looked at Kakashi in surprise, and said, Forget it, although you are a defective product, you are barely capable of being my sensei. Of course, this sensei has a time limit. Kakashi's mouth twitched fiercely, and he was unusually speechless. Compared with the usually low-key and gentle Uchiha Itachi, Uchiha Sasuke's style and character are absolutely opposite. Forget it as you like. No longer entangled in this issue, Kakashi smiled bitterly. He just wanted Sasuke to stay by his side and observe secretly, in case this kid is tempted by others to do something unforgivable. Ah, what a crazy kid. I don't know if he will be so lawless after knowing the true strength of Dustless, Sama. Zetsu, who was secretly paying attention to Team 7, sneered. To be honest, when Uchiha Sasuke said those words, not only Kakashi was shocked, but he and Black Zetsu were also shocked. He couldn't help but sweat for Uchiha Sasuke's ignorance. There is a limit to ignorance and stupidity. Obviously, Uchiha Sasuke didn't realize what Dustless represented. To what extent his strength reached, only God knows. Even if he said that he surpassed Uchiha Madara, no one would doubt it. Isn't this interesting? I'm afraid that Dustless, Sama, also thinks so. He can't wait for his third brother to bring him some fun to relieve his current boring life. Black Zetsu looked at Uchiha Sasuke indifferently. In the past thousands of years, he had provoked several reincarnations of Asura and Indra. Naturally, he knew Uchiha Sasuke's potential better than others. Perhaps now he is not as good as Uchiha Itachi. As long as Uchiha Itachi wants to, he can kill him in an instant. But as Indra's reincarnation, Uchiha Sasuke is destined to live a mediocre life. This is not his choice, but it was destined when he was born. Yes, as Dustless Sama's younger brother, this kid should also be trash. White Zetsu nodded thoughtfully. Uchiha Itachi is also Dustless's younger brother. His strength is obvious to all. There is no reason for Uchiha Sasuke to be trash. Chapter 202. This is interesting, riding on my head to show off. That kid's ambition is quite big, and he has such a big ambition, but I really hope he has this determination and will. Dustless lazily listened to Zetsu's report, and it seemed that he heard the most interesting topic. The corner of his mouth raised a faint arc, and he said to himself with emotion. However, that high smile was no different from a fox's. If possible, Dustless really hoped that Uchiha Sasuke could grow up and have a good fight with Uchiha Itachi. The two of you are surprisingly close. An indifferent and quiet voice suddenly sounded, and a faint ripple appeared in the dark space, as if it was full of magic that didn't dissipate for a long time. The slender body outline and the traces of the vicissitudes of life on the indifferent face could be vaguely seen. Wearing the same Akatsuki uniform as Dustless, it was not difficult to see that it was Uchiha Itachi. When did this guy? White Zetsu was surprised to see Uchiha Itachi coming out of the darkness. His face was gloomy and cautious. Just now, he didn't realize that someone was approaching him. He immediately saw Dustless with a smile on the corner of his mouth. He was relieved. I'm afraid that Dustless already realized that Uchiha Itachi was coming. Good hiding, his strength can't be underestimated. Black Zetsu also said in a deep voice. I'm afraid that Uchiha Itachi's strength has reached an incredible level. I'm afraid that even the leader of Akatsuki, Pain, can't win against him. I've been waiting for a long time, and you finally came, Itachi. Looking at Uchiha Itachi with a smile, Dustless's smile became more obvious. In fact, he was already aware when Uchiha Itachi came. As a member of Akatsuki, it should be normal for us to communicate with each other. Turning his head and looking at Dustless, Uchiha Itachi's eyes suddenly flashed with light, and a rare human-like fluctuation appeared in his eyes. Why did you join Akatsuki? There should be something worth your attention here. As for tailed beasts, even if you don't need them, you can still catch them. Itachi looked at Dustless with torch-like eyes. His cold eyes seemed to be able to penetrate everything. However, Dustless's body was shrouded in endless gloomy luster, like a black hole in the depths of the vast universe. Not only could he not see through it, but he also exuded a majestic suction force, which made Itachi lost his mind and unable to extricate himself from it. Skunk. A plain voice sounded, like ripples spreading in the water, pulling the absent-minded Itachi back to reality. He suddenly looked up and saw Dustless looking at him indifferently. Itachi's heart was slightly sluggish. Perhaps at that moment, if Dustless had made a sneak attack on him, he would have succeeded. To some extent, I joined Akatsuki for the same purpose, but there are essential differences. If I remember correctly, after joining Akatsuki for so many years, this is the first time we've met alone, unfortunately. His eyes fell on Itachi, Dustless said. It's a pity that the kid is missing. Sasuke is a genius, not worse than you. Compared to you and me, who have been through a lot, he's much happier. After that, Dustless looked at Itachi with a smile. Although Itachi hid it well, Dustless could still see his inner vibration and unnaturalness. Itachi, what do you think of the so-called brother? Suddenly closing his eyes, Dustless lay comfortably on the soft sofa, spread his arms, and asked in an unusually lazy tone, with a little expectation. Hearing this, Itachi just kept silent. He was sure what Dustless was going to say next. You must already know the stone tablet under the Naka shrine of the Uchiha clan. There is a stone tablet left by Hagoromo Sennin, which records the steps to open the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Glancing at Itachi, seeing that he was unmoved, Dustless continued. As long as you transplant the Mangekyo Sharingan of your relatives, you can open the legendary eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. From then on, your dojutsu will not be limited. Even if you use it without limit, it will not be sealed. In other words, the Uchiha clan is a clan abandoned and cursed by God. Normal human feelings are too extravagant for us who bear the Uchiha name. The so-called brothers are just parts of each other, that's all. Hagoromo Sennin? Stupid thing, that stone tablet has already been modified by me. The whole world is my chess piece. The story of your ninja is just a script written by me, including you, Dustless Uchiha. Heiju looked at Wu Chen with sarcasm in his heart. Then, he closed his eyes calmly and his mind wandered. He couldn't help but imagine Wu Chen's ever-changing expression after the truth was revealed. I'm standing here, if you have the ability, come and get it. Itachi's deep, dark eyes fell on Dustless. Uchiha Itachi was blunt, calm, and emotionless like a sculpture. He already knew what Dustless meant. Ah! I'm Yorin Sasuke's big brother, how could I do such a heartless thing? Dustless said very seriously. Not to mention the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Even the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan couldn't arouse his interest. The only thing that he cared about now was the ownership of the Jubi. Nothing else mattered to him. If you have something to say, just say it. Itachi looked at Dustless faintly. Seeing the latter's serious face and clear pupils, he couldn't help but frown secretly. He also knew the way to open the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Transplanting a relative's Mangekyo Sharingan can give birth to the legendary eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. There was no other way. Dustless's dojutsu was unusually strong, and it also reflected the darkness in his heart. In other words, the stronger the dojutsu, the darker their ambitions will be, and they will fall into evil ways. In Itachi's view, Dustless was a person who pursued power, and there was no reason for him not to be tempted by the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Chapter 203. Itachi's heart was extremely complicated, but he was also relieved. If Dustless took the opportunity to attack, he really didn't have the confidence to resist. Even if this was inside the Akatsuki, as long as there was a dispute, other members would immediately come to support. However, according to Itachi's estimation, he was afraid that all members would face Dustless together. His eyes fell on Zetsu quietly, and Dustless's eyes lit up, indicating him to leave. Looking at Dustless suspiciously, Zetsu nodded, and then his body began to sink into the depths of the ground and disappeared. In the empty darkness, only Dustless and Itachi were left. That guy really listened to you. Seeing Zetsu leave, Itachi frowned slightly. Zetsu was naturally a member of the Akatsuki. Everyone was equal, and there was no hierarchy. However, when it came to Dustless, it obviously became a subtle superior-subordinate relationship. Dustless smiled and said softly, "Maybe you don't know, but there is actually a level above the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan." With a faint light in his eyes, Dustless whispered, "It's the Rinnegan above the three dojutsu, Pain's Eyes." Without the slightest reservation, Dustless told Itachi the origin of Rinnegan, with a sly sneer on the corner of his mouth. Impossible. Itachi directly denied Dustless's idea without thinking. Maybe the evolution of the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan is indeed the Rinnegan, but Uzumaki Nagato didn't have the Uchiha's blood. Everyone will rely on their own knowledge and understanding to live and be bound by these things. This is the so-called reality. Dustless casually glanced at Itachi and explained faintly, with a rare melancholy tone. In other words, everyone actually lives in their own fantasy world. For example, you, Itachi. Before seeing me, the whole world thought I was dead. This is your fantasy. Hearing this, Itachi frowned and asked, "What are you trying to say? Don't you understand? Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan is the limit of the Sharingan. This is just your simple one-sided understanding." Dustless stood up and stretched his body slightly. Immediately, the sound of bones cracking could be heard from his body. Through the window, he looked at the hazy horizon in the distance. In fact, you've been living in the fantasy world of the world. Things are not as simple as you think. Perhaps if you look at the same thing in a different way and jump away from your preconceived notions, the doubts in your heart will be cleared up. Dustless looked at the void in front of him indifferently. That's the truth. Uchiha Itachi tried to build a perfect world for Uchiha Sasuke, but it was impossible. Itachi was silent, but there was a faint light of approval in the depths of his eyes. Indeed, as Dustless said, he has always been looking at the world with his own wisdom and cognition. He was bound by his own thoughts, so he couldn't completely see the essence of the world. His big brother, who he thought was dead, suddenly resurrected, and the masked man, Uchiha Madara, who he thought was dead, was the same. Itachi quickly realized the problem. Uzumaki didn't have Uchiha blood, and Nagato's Rinnegan was probably transplanted from someone else. As expected of Itachi, "You're really quick-witted. You found the problem so quickly." As you imagined, Uzumaki Nagato, who didn't have the Uchiha's bloodline and didn't have the Sharingan, was indeed a marionette. And the man who gave him the Rinnegan was the masked man who helped you. Dustless didn't hide anything. Itachi knew this because the first person who contacted Itachi was the masked man. As for the identity of the masked man, I don't think I need to say it. You should know who he is, and it coincides with your imagination. That man is Uchiha Madara. Time passed, and in a blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Konoha was bustling with people, and a large number of ninjas could be seen. However, a large number of them were teenagers, and they were dressed differently. Obviously, they came from different countries. The reason why they came to Konoha was to participate in the Chunin exam. Team 7, led by Kakashi, passed the first exam without any mishap. Even if Uzumaki Naruto taught them a blank paper, they still managed to pass. Today, they were about to face the second survival trial. Ninjas from all over the world gathered here, looking at the beautiful female ninja in front of them. Their faces were cautious, and they didn't dare to show the slightest arrogance. Looking sideways, it was two unlucky children who were foaming at the mouth. Because they just offended the female ninja of Konoha, they were beaten to vomit and have diarrhea. The person who beat them was a ninja named Mitarashi Anko. This little girl is really fierce. Uzumaki Naruto wiped the sweat stains and couldn't help but feel a chill. Obviously, Mitarashi Anko's fierce style made his heart palpitate. Little girl, is that what you should call me? Beside him, Haruno Sakura rolled her eyes and looked at Uzumaki Naruto, dumbfounded. That woman really knows how to find work for others. In the bushes, a dark shadow was looming. His body was embroidered with a dazzling red cloud. Staring at the dense crowd below, Wuxia frowned without a trace. Forget it, let's take that girl away. Dustless, who planned to leave, sighed, thinking of Otsutsuki Higuro's task, and smiled bitterly. Not to mention, this is just a convenient task. Staring at the cowardly girl in the crowd, Dustless's eyes flashed with a cold light, and then his body disappeared into the sky like a ghost. Hearing that Dustless was going to Konoha to spy on the situation, Higuro immediately issued a bitter task for Dustless, and there was no reward. The content was to catch someone with the Byakugan bloodline. Chapter 204. In the scorching summer, the merciless sun roasted the earth. The ninjas who were about to participate in the second exam came from many ninja villages, and they also secretly observed each other. Soon these people would be enemies. The young ninjas secretly observed each other, and soon a little devil with red hair and eye circles came into their line of sight. Damn, what's wrong with this red-haired guy? How can he have such a crazy murderous aura? How many evil things did that bastard with eye circles do? Many ninjas from the ninja villages changed their faces and stared cautiously at the little boy with his hands in front of him and a sand-like gourd behind him. They felt the coldness of the dead on his body, and their bodies trembled involuntarily. The little boy had a dark red love character on his forehead, and his body was surrounded by an aura of isolation. His emotionless pupils were like a bloodthirsty beast, filled with palpitating power. The girl and the boy dressed in black beside him were obviously not simple, and no one dared to look at them. The red-haired boy with murderous aura was naturally Gaara. The girl with a beautiful figure was naturally his sister Temari, and the other was his brother Kankuro. That little tanuki cat is still in his body. I was worried that he was dead before, but it turned out to be a waste of emotions. Looking at Gaara, or simply the Ichibi in his stomach, Dustless was angry. He didn't spend any effort to find the Ichibi back then. The vitality of the Bijou is really huge. He didn't die even after being hit by such a trick. His pupils narrowed slightly, Dustless's eyes locked on Gaara, and his threatening gaze seemed to penetrate Gaara's body and directly see the Ichibi Shikaku sealed in his body. The combination of canned Susanoo and glinting fruit didn't kill him. Dustless was really surprised, but he also deliberately let Shikaku go. Otherwise, Shikaku's life would have been taken by him. And it seemed that Gaara felt that someone was spying on him, and he subconsciously looked over. The scene in his eyes was empty, and the empty environment was panoramic. Looks like it's just my imagination. Retracting his gaze again, Gaara just stood there indifferently, quietly waiting for the upcoming killing feast. He seemed to see the tragic scene of blood dancing all over the sky, and his face turned ferocious uncontrollably. This kid's intuition is quite sharp, Dustless said faintly. He raised his eyes and looked at the girl in the distance. Hesitation flashed in his heart. If he took Hinata away like this, it would cause a lot of trouble. Or to create an illusion of her death. Staring at the murderous Gaara, Dustless's mouth curled into a mocking smile. Even if Hyuga Hinata was killed by such a murderous demon, not many people would doubt it. That old bastard Orochimaru actually played with these little brats, and even disguised himself as a woman. Looking at the young woman from Kusagakure, Dustless's mouth flashed with a touch of sarcasm, and he couldn't help but sweat for Orochimaru's madness. Let's not talk about the shortcomings of Orochimaru's so-called living corpse reincarnation technique for the time being. The only thing that made Dust blush with shame was that Orochimaru had once reincarnated into a woman's body. Although his soul would not change, his physiology had become a woman. He's quite open-minded. Orochimaru has obviously abandoned the concept of humanity. It doesn't matter to him whether he's a man or a woman. For him, eternal and indestructible survival is above everything. Even if he has to give up everything, he doesn't care. Time slowly passed by, and the second exam soon began. A large number of young ninjas poured into the forest of death ahead. There were 13 Heaven Scrolls and 13 Earth Scrolls, and they were randomly distributed to 26 groups. Each group had to get a pair of Heaven and Earth Scrolls and reach the destination within 5 days to pass the exam. Otherwise, it's a failure. It seems that it's starting. Looking at the little brats who poured into the forest one after another, Dustless's eyes flashed with hesitation. After hesitating for a while, he resolutely chose to follow. It's not that he was bored to play with these little brats, but there's a saying that plans can't keep up with changes. Although he was sure that Hyuga Hinata wouldn't die, Dustless still followed them to prevent accidents. After so many years, her heart of reviving the Otsutsuki clan is still alive. Sighing silently, Dustless was too lazy to talk nonsense. Otsutsuki Haguro's stomach hasn't moved yet. He probably wants to turn Hyuga Hinata, who has Byakugan, into a member of the Otsutsuki clan. After all, the bloodline of the two clans is the same. However, Dustless didn't choose to follow Hyuga Hinata and others, but chose to follow the figures in front of him. His eyes swept over the 3 figures in front of him. Uzumaki Naruto, Haruno Sakura, and Uchiha Sasuke. You 3 are really a perfect match. Nodding without a trace, Dustless suddenly felt that these 3 groups were an unusual match at this time. Uzumaki Naruto, Haruno Sakura, and Uchiha Sasuke, who is good at disguising. To some extent, they are a perfect match, a collection of strange people in various fields. Time passed quickly, and there were only 5 days left. Once it's over, it means that everything is over, and all members of Team 7 will lose the qualification to be promoted to Chunin this time. Therefore, although Sasuke and Naruto usually have some disagreements, the two still chose to join forces at such a critical juncture. However, perhaps the reason why Team 7 is always so tragic, it didn't take long for them to meet their biggest enemy, Orochimaru, who pretended to be a ninja of Kusagakure. The reason why Orochimaru spent so much effort was nothing more than that after learning about Uchiha Dustless and Uchiha Itachi's Sharingan, the fire in his heart didn't reduce, but burned even more. He chose to attack their third brother. Chapter 205. Dustless, who was observing in the dark, frowned. Orochimaru was still the same. He didn't change at all. From the beginning to the end, he still yearned for the Uchiha clan's Sharingan. It's my fault. After a while, Wu Chen's eyes narrowed into slits. If it weren't for Orochimaru, Jiraiya, and Tsunade, this old guy wouldn't have been so obsessed with the Sharingan. Even if he had to die, he wouldn't be so obsessed with the Sharingan. To some extent, it's indeed Dustless's fault for showing the power of the Sharingan in front of Orochimaru. Hiss. Perhaps he felt that Sasuke, Uzumaki Naruto, and Haruno Sakura were insignificant ants. Orochimaru just casually summoned a huge python, hoping to use it to deal with Team 7. In the face of the unprecedented giant python, Uchiha Sasuke, who was always successful and neat, was uncharacteristically scared. But Uzumaki Naruto, who was known as the last place, turned fear into motivation and fought fiercely with the giant python summoned by Orochimaru. His will is good. He has the potential to become a strong man. Seeing that Uzumaki Naruto didn't retreat, Dustless secretly nodded. Now Uchiha Sasuke has no fighting power, but Uzumaki Naruto, who he despises the most, is in the limelight. Hiss. Pucci. After several fierce fights, the giant snake didn't have much advantage. Instead, Uzumaki Naruto had the upper hand. The giant snake's body was left with many deep red wounds left by the dagger. It looked particularly ferocious. Hiss! The giant snake stared at Uzumaki Naruto angrily, its eyes emitting cold murderous intent, but it was obvious that this beast was extremely smart. It knew that Uzumaki Naruto wasn't easy to deal with. The snake's head suddenly twisted, looking at Uchiha Sasuke. Its eyes flashed with cunning, and its huge unyielding body swooped straight down. Obviously, this beast wasn't stupid. It knew the meaning of pick the weak persimmon, so it chose to attack Uchiha Sasuke first. Awoo! The giant snake's bloody mouth opened at a 180-degree angle, and an incomparably fishy smell came out of its cavity. Its sharp fangs were as dense and sharp as a shark's sawtooth, shining with an invincible cold light, and could easily tear and bite a person's body. In the blink of an eye, it arrived beside Uchiha Sasuke and mercilessly swallowed him. Get out of my way! Bang! Uzumaki Naruto rushed over at the critical moment, and at the same time, he kicked Sasuke with all his strength. Sasuke fell on the thick tree trunk. He took out several sharp kunai in his hand and threw them like a rainstorm, heading straight toward the scary snake head. Pucci! The flickering kunai penetrated deep into the serpent's body, and scarlet flowers immediately splashed in the air. The serpent's ferocious body became even more terrifying. Oh! An unprecedented pain suddenly spread all over his body. The giant snake's eyes were filled with blood, and it swung its huge head at Naruto mercilessly. Bang! Naruto, who was caught off guard, was immediately thrown away by the powerful force. Although he had blocked the attack with a kunai in front of his chest, he was still hit by the beast regardless of the casualties. He flew in the same direction as Uchiha Sasuke. That kid is really good. If he wasn't Sasuke, he would be a good reincarnation. Orochimaru saw Uzumaki Naruto's every move and immediately cast an admiring look at Naruto. Some people dare to stand up and resist in the face of death, and some people, like Uchiha Sasuke, had their will collapse. The giant snake opened its big mouth, revealing its sharp fangs again, and rushed forward madly. It seemed that it wanted to bite Uzumaki Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke. Get out of my way, you annoying clown. Hurry up and run for your life. Standing up and wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Uzumaki Naruto looked at the sluggish Uchiha Sasuke with disdain, and sneered contemptuously. It seems that you're done, my great genius. A piece of trash like you wants to avenge your parents? Dream on, you useless coward. Hearing this, Uchiha Sasuke's expression became more dazed. His eyes suddenly flashed with a strong bloody light, and he inevitably remembered the tragic scene of the destruction of the Uchiha clan. The incomparably cold voice seemed to echo in his ears, making Uchiha Sasuke's nerves reflexively stood up. My foolish little brother, if you want to kill me, then hate me, detest me. Then live an ugly life. When you have the same eyes as mine, come to me. Shut up, trash. Today, I'll show you who's the incompetent last place and who's the incompetent coward. The gloomy killing intent broke out, and Uchiha Sasuke's small face was covered with a layer of ice. Even the kunai in his hand was frozen. It can be seen that Uzumaki Naruto's previous words touched Uchiha Sasuke a lot. This kid really impressed me. I didn't expect him to have this kind of attribute. He even knows how to provoke others. Looking at Uzumaki Naruto with a smile on his face, Dustless's eyes rippled, and he looked at Uzumaki Naruto with a lot of interest. Locking his eyes on Uzumaki Naruto, Dustless shook his head. He may not understand in this life. This may be Uzumaki Naruto's personality charm, far beyond any kind of ninjutsu, and has the wonderful power to turn something rotten into something magical. Uchiha Sasuke didn't disappoint Uzumaki Naruto. The two of them finally spent a lot of effort to kill this unkillable anaconda. Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto also exhausted their strength, lying on the ground and gasping for breath. Orochimaru, who was hiding in the dark, also came out. It seemed that he intended to kill these two boys himself. Chapter 206. Orochimaru walked out of the forest with a pale face. The previous woman's skin was also peeled off, revealing his original appearance, which was neither a man nor a woman. His whole person was full of gloomy aura, giving people a particularly depressing feeling. Who the hell are you? Get out of here if you don't want to die. Uchiha Sasuke's pupils suddenly shrank, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. The person in front of him was definitely not a good person. In this forest of death, except for enemies, there were no allies. He was afraid that this man with a pale face was definitely here to snatch their scroll. Kid, your temper is quite bad. Orochimaru looked at the hot-tempered Uchiha Sasuke and couldn't help but stare at him, or simply at Uchiha Sasuke's body. His snake eyes flashed with a bright light from time to time, like a beast encountering a beauty. He was particularly excited. What a beautiful and incomparable body. Although it's not as good as your two brothers, it will definitely surpass Itachi in the future. Orochimaru's eyes shone with a wolf-like light. His naked eyes seemed to strip people's clothes, and he could easily see the inside of the body. Seeing those eyes that wanted to eat him alive, Sasuke felt a chill and unconsciously got goosebumps, but his ears still keenly caught the words, "Your two brothers. Uchiha Dustless and Uchiha Itachi? I knew that Kakashi was lying to me. Uchiha Dustless really didn't die. You actually know the traces of the two of them. It seems that you are also an unusual guy." Looking at Orochimaru, Uchiha Sasuke asked in a hoarse voice. Even because of excitement, his body was slightly trembling. Sasuke knew that Orochimaru's origin was not simple. Kakashi's concept of Dustless and Itachi was extremely vague. However, Orochimaru in front of him gave Sasuke the feeling that he knew everything about Dustless and Itachi. Not only do I know the two of them, during the Third World War, I also teamed up with Dustless to fight against the Rock Village. Later, when I defected from Konoha and joined the Akatsuki, your second brother Uchiha Itachi also joined, but in the end, I failed to attack him and had to leave the Akatsuki. Speaking of which, the grudge between me and you three brothers is not small. Orochimaru said bluntly, with a bit of melancholy and unwillingness in his tone. Losing to Dustless may be acceptable, but as one of the Sannin, Orochimaru also has pride. Losing to Uchiha Itachi really made him lose face. Especially now that he was reduced to sneak attacking their third brother, Orochimaru felt extremely aggrieved. You bastard snake, you can't beat Sasuke's big brother and second brother, so you sneak attacked us, you're really shameless. No matter how ignorant Uzumaki Naruto was, he knew what Orochimaru meant. Orochimaru obviously wanted to pick a soft persimmon, and obviously, he came for Sasuke. Looking at Sasuke's pale face, Orochimaru smiled slightly, shrugged, and said very frankly, "You're right, I did come for the soft persimmon." Orochimaru also didn't think that losing to Uchiha Dustless or Uchiha Itachi was shameful. Not to mention him, I'm afraid that even Pain, who has Rinnegan, may not be able to defeat these two brothers. This is not a shameful thing. Orochimaru, who has lived for most of his life, understood this truth. You bastard! Sasuke's face was even more ugly. Orochimaru's words were undoubtedly a slap in his face. It was a blatant statement that because he was too weak, Orochimaru came for him. To be honest, as long as I move my finger, I can easily crush you to death. You're really weak and pitiful. Not to mention Uchiha Dustless, you're not even qualified to face Uchiha Itachi. Slightly disappointed, Orochimaru glanced at Sasuke a few times and sighed. But soon, Orochimaru's decadence disappeared, and he looked at Sasuke with shining eyes. Although your strength is not worthy of praise, it's extremely bad, but I, Orochimaru, will accept the Uchiha clan's Sharingan. As soon as Orochimaru's voice fell, his body was like a snake's nest, and countless white snakes crawled out of Orochimaru's body. This guy's jutsu is really disgusting. It seems that the serpent just now was also summoned by him. Uzumaki Naruto looked at Orochimaru and saw saliva falling from his mouth, and his body trembled unnaturally. It was the first time he saw such a disgusting jutsu, and it was as disgusting as the serpent that he and Sasuke just killed. Naruto, don't be careless, this guy is not simple. Looking at the dense group of snakes on the ground, Sasuke frowned slightly, and at the same time, he jumped to the tree behind him to avoid the snakes below. Uzumaki Naruto did the same. Katon. Great Fireball Jutsu. The blazing and powerful fireball spewed out from his mouth, instantly annihilating the snakes below. The fire wave swallowed the snakes, forming a large vacuum area. However, there were too many small snakes. Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto were already exhausted. They had spent a lot of effort in the previous battle, and now they really didn't have the strength to fight with Orochimaru, the Snake King. Oh, it seems that you've reached your limit. Looking at Uzumaki Naruto, Dustless nodded slightly. It's good that they could reach this point. After all, people's energy is limited. Seeing you two so embarrassed, I'll be merciful and save you. Uzumaki Naruto, you have to thank me in the future. With a strange smile on his face, Dustless formed a seal with one hand. In Uzumaki Naruto's spiritual world, the Senjutsu Bright God Gate, that Dustless used to bind Kyuubi loosened. Chapter 207. Orochimaru looked at Sasuke coldly. His body suddenly became like rubber, and his head was strangely elongated. He opened his mouth ferociously and bit Sasuke's neck. Naruto, there's something wrong with this guy. I suggest we retreat immediately. Staring gloomily at Orochimaru, Sasuke's heart sank, and he couldn't help but want to retreat. There's a saying that it's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. There's no need to fight to the death with this snake. Just as he was about to pull Uzumaki Naruto to retreat, Uchiha Sasuke suddenly realized that Uzumaki Naruto beside him seemed to have changed into a different person in an instant. His whole body was filled with the smell of disaster, like the culprit who destroyed the world in prehistoric times. The boundless murderous aura almost made his soul collapse. All the air around him was sucked away. Uchiha Sasuke had a feeling of suffocation. Ew! The harsh beast's roar exploded like a bomb, setting off a strong wave of air. Uchiha Sasuke, who was next to Uzumaki Naruto, was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. He was directly shaken by the powerful force, and his internal organs were trembling. Looking around, Uzumaki Naruto's body was shrouded in red light, and his appearance could no longer be seen clearly. His body was covered in magma-like crimson chakra, and his four tails danced with the wind, creating strong ripples in the air. So that's how it is. So it's that little brat Kyuubi, Minato's child? No wonder he's so extraordinary at such a young age. It turns out that his parents are famous figures. Suddenly, Namake's Minato's appearance appeared in his mind, and he subconsciously compared it with Uzumaki Naruto's appearance. There are indeed some similarities. Damn it, how did Naruto become so strong in an instant? Uchiha Sasuke, who was shaken by Uzumaki Naruto's explosive power, looked extremely ugly. He looked at Uzumaki Naruto, who was wrapped in negative chakra and eroded like a beast. His heart was filled with mixed feelings, jealousy, unwillingness, happiness, and all kinds of emotions. Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto were teammates, but they were also competitors. How could Uchiha Sasuke be willing to accept this? Ayo. Boom boom boom. The four-tailed Uzumaki Naruto completely lost his mind, and fox-like fangs grew on both sides of his mouth, and he roared towards the sky. The roar of the sky was mixed with strong chakra fluctuations, like a level 10 hurricane raging, laughing unscrupulously in the sky. It felt like it could destroy the world with a flick of its finger. The chakra wave spread like a volcanic eruption, spreading to every corner of the world. Konoha's high-level officials rushed over immediately. They still haven't forgotten the previous 2 times when Kyuubi attacked Konoha. Damned brat. He was too careless. Orochimaru's face was livid. Looking at Uzumaki Naruto, who was transformed into Yonbi, his pale face was filled with murderous intent. He couldn't wait to tear Naruto into pieces. After Uzumaki Naruto made such a ruckus, Konoha's high-level officials and a large number of ninjas will definitely rush to support him. Orochimaru's plan to forcibly abduct Uchiha Sasuke will be ruined. He stared at Uzumaki Naruto angrily, and the majestic chakra also began to rage, and a strong murderous intent broke out of his body. He also wanted to see if the legendary Kyuubi was really so evil. Oh, this is interesting. You want to fight Kyuubi with your own strength. Orochimaru, you are too naive. Seeing that Orochimaru didn't retreat, and his chakra was desperately leaking out, Dustless suddenly sneered. It's not that he didn't think highly of Orochimaru. Orochimaru may have no problem with other Bijuu. But there is a difference between Kyuubi's power and other Bijuus. Kyuubi's full eruption can completely crush any Bijuu. Since you want to see Kyuubi's power so much, well, I have enough time today. Let's see what makes you different from others. Wu Chen's eyes suddenly turned cold as he looked at the duel that was about to take place. Ow! 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 Orochimaru slammed to the ground, and his big mouth immediately opened. The corners of his mouth twisted violently, and his throat was the same, as if something was drilling out of his lungs. The scene was particularly horrifying. No matter what jutsu you use, it's so disgusting and unsightly, just like you, Orochimaru. Looking faintly at the thousands of big snakes gushing out of Orochimaru's mouth, Dustless was unmoved. He was no longer the naive child who didn't know anything. After so many years in the shinobi world, his shrewdness has reached a level where he won't change his expression even if Mount Tai collapses in front of him. Sweeping away, countless thick snakes crawled out of Orochimaru's mouth, rushing towards Uzumaki Naruto. When approaching Uzumaki Naruto, the sea of snakes all opened their big mouths, revealing dazzling sharp swords. Inferior ninjutsu, but it's quite a match for you, Orochimaru. Leisurely closing his eyes, Dustless wasn't worried that Uzumaki Naruto would be killed. The sea of swords gathered by countless swords seemed to be unparalleled, but it was a trivial matter for Kyuubi. Looking up, he saw Uzumaki Naruto raised his palm full of spikes, looking at the snakes rushing towards him without fear, and then lightly patted the ground. Boom, boom, boom. The solid ground was suddenly torn apart like a piece of paper. The long and narrow cracks centered on Uzumaki Naruto spread crazily in all directions, like a spider web, swallowing the ground, and scarlet light gushed out from the depths of the ground. The unstoppable sea of snakes seemed to have met its natural enemy, and was easily swallowed up by the red light. It was so simple that not even a sliver of the snake was left. Chapter 208. Orochimaru looked at the wide ground and the crack that was swallowing him. He couldn't help but take a deep breath. At the same time, he didn't forget to step back to avoid being swallowed by the crack. The red light surging deep in the ground is no joke. It's the blazing chakra formed by Kyuubi's blazing chakra. Even if it doesn't erase you, you will end up either dead or injured, just like the snakes just now. This is the power of Kyuubi, worthy of being the most powerful tailed beast, and it doesn't seem to be at full strength. Orochimaru quickly pulled hundreds of meters away from Uzumaki Naruto, and his ugly face calmed down. He stared at Uzumaki Naruto, and his throat choked unconsciously. The four thick crimson tails behind him undoubtedly explained everything. If the strength of a tailed beast is calculated by the tail, Uzumaki Naruto in front of him didn't even use half of Kyuubi's strength. They are both tailed beasts. Why is the difference in strength so big? No wonder that group of monsters will change their faces when they talk about Kyuubi. Orochimaru said to himself hoarsely, while looking at Uzumaki Naruto solemnly. It was the first time he experienced the power of Kyuubi. If he had to find a suitable enemy for Naruto, he felt that Pain in the Akatsuki organization is the most suitable. This was because both of them had unfathomable strength. Are you still going to struggle? His pupils dilated, shooting out in different light. Wu Chen stared at Orochimaru, who had no intention of retreating, casting a hopeless look. If Orochimaru can defeat Kyuubi, then the tailed beasts in the world may have died long ago. It seems that he won't back down without suffering a little. Dustless looked at Orochimaru speechlessly. He was obviously looking for trouble, but since someone is not afraid of death, Dustless doesn't mind watching a good show carefully. Oh! Seeing that Orochimaru didn't retreat, Uzumaki Naruto roared at the sky, and seemed to perceive that his dignity was challenged. His crimson body swayed with countless chakra balls of different colors, about the size of a thumb. The granular chakra energy balls slowly floated in the air. At a glance, there were quite a number of them. Orochimaru was slightly stunned and looked at the small balls in the sky in surprise. Feeling the negative emotions contained in them, his entire soul trembled abnormally, and his hair stood on end. Once this huge force gathered, it could easily tear him into pieces. Such an evil chakra of hatred and negative chakra is not something that can be controlled by humans. Although there are some differences, it should be a Bijidama. Staring at the Bijidama Naruto, Orochimaru didn't dare to be arrogant and carefully guarded against Naruto. Although the technique in front of him was different from Bijidama, it was more powerful than it. During the Third Shinobi World War, Orochimaru once had the honor of fighting against the Rock Village's Jinchuriki, and learned how powerful the Bijidama is. Countless energy balls floated in the air, circling around Naruto like raindrops. Under Orochimaru's surprised gaze, the Bijidama Naruto opened his big mouth, revealing his sharp fangs. His mouth was like a black hole in the depths of the universe, emitting a majestic suction force. Sucking the energy balls in the sky to his mouth, constantly compressing them until they finally became a palm-sized black ball. Uzumaki Naruto didn't hesitate to swallow it, and his whole body instantly swelled uncontrollably like a hydrogen balloon. His whole body was filled with indescribable irritation, like a volcano about to erupt. The unprecedented destructive power made Orochimaru's face change immediately. Without hesitation, he bit his finger and used his strongest defense at present. He was sure that it was definitely a ninjutsu similar to Bijudama. Summoning Jutsu, Triple Rashomon. Kakaka? The ground suddenly burst open, and the defensive walls of the fanged grimace rose from the ground. There were a total of 3 sides, and above them, there was an ancient aura of the netherworld. It was like the door of Azura from the depths of hell, and it gave people an extremely gloomy feeling. Especially the huge mouth of Rashomon, it seemed to be mocking the opponent's weakness and weakness. This old guy also learned the first Hokage's jutsu. It's not easy. He's worthy of being an expert in forbidden jutsu. Looking thoughtfully at the 3 defensive walls on the ground, Dustless's eyes flashed with a touch of surprise. 12 years ago, when he led the masked man Uchiha Obito to attack Konoha, he defeated Hashirama and absorbed his Senjutsu chakra. Now, most of Hashirama's ninjutsu, including Mokuton and Senjutsu, are used by Dustless. Dustless can naturally use the jutsu used by Orochimaru, but he didn't have the opportunity to use it. Whoosh! A huge beam of crimson light spewed out from Uzumaki Naruto's mouth. The devilish beam of destruction was overwhelming, raging in the vast sky, and dyed the sky crimson. The harsh roar resounded through the sky, and Orochimaru, who was behind the triple Rashomon, was dizzy, and the area covered was almost impossible to estimate. Boom boom boom! The ground along the way burst open, and long and narrow ditches were elongated. The ground was scorched. Looking at it, the Rashomon in front was wiped out by the destructive force, and Orochimaru's head was inserted deep into the ground. Even the mountain behind Orochimaru was razed. Well, this seems to be my Gaara. No, this is Shikaka's chakra. Dustless, who was calm, suddenly opened his eyes and felt another restless bloody killing in the air, and the violent chakra with boundless hatred. He was slightly stunned. This chakra was Shikaku's. After all, about 15 years ago, Dustless personally experienced the strength of Shikaku. For the time being, I will let you be free for 2 more years. As for 2 years later, I will naturally seal you in the Gedo Mazo. A cold light flashed in his eyes. The reason why Shikaku's chakra broke out was probably because he felt the chakra of his old enemy, Kyuubi, and remembered the past grievances, so he couldn't control the eruption of the tailed beast's power. Chapter 209. Ka ka ka. Violent waves suddenly surged from the depths of the ground, as if an incomparably thick giant python was sneaking around. The ground was undulating up and down, like a prehistoric giant beast that was sneaking around in the deep sea. It stirred up ripples, but no traces of it could be seen. However, the beast's target didn't seem to be Uzumaki Naruto. Boom boom boom. Orochimaru's head suddenly drilled out of the ground and was exposed to the sun. Surprisingly, Orochimaru's body was stretched hundreds of meters long. The other half of his body was still 100 meters away, and his head instantly appeared behind Uchiha Sasuke. His strong and powerful neck was like a snake wrapping around Uchiha Sasuke, making him unable to break free. Orochimaru opened his big mouth, revealing 2 sharp fangs, and without hesitation, he bit towards Uchiha Sasuke's neck. Undoubtedly, Uchiha Sasuke, who couldn't resist, was just a fish on the chopping board. He was as fragile as a baby in swaddling clothes. Pucci! As Orochimaru pulled out his teeth, it was clear that Uchiha Sasuke's neck had a crimson mark, and the fangs penetrated his body, which was extremely terrifying. Hey, how do you feel? Look at you, you seem to be very unwilling. Also, if someone has 2 deified brothers on top of his head, he will not be able to stand up. Orochimaru smiled gloomily. His hoarse voice was full of contempt and disdain, and even a little sympathy. Uchiha Sasuke had 2 powerful brothers, Uchiha Dustless and Uchiha Itachi, and Uchiha Sasuke was indeed a bit sad. I have left the power of Orochimaru in your body. If you want to surpass your brothers, come to me. I am Orochimaru, one of the Sannin, and I can make you stronger, just like Uchiha. Uchiha Itachi. Orochimaru can see that Uchiha Sasuke is an ambitious kid, so he planted the power of Curse of Heaven in his body, which can enhance Uchiha Sasuke's power, and he will be tempted by power to join him. Orochimaru originally wanted to say that as long as he followed him, he could obtain power beyond Uchiha Dustless, but after thinking about it, he quickly threw it aside and replaced it with Uchiha Itachi. At this point, Orochimaru didn't expect to capture Uchiha Sasuke. He could feel that a large number of Konoha's ninjas were coming towards him. Damn it, what the hell is this thing, you bastard? Is your name Orochimaru? What a disgusting name. I will not let you go. Uchiha Sasuke looked at Orochimaru's snake head and gnashed his teeth in hatred. The severe pain spread from his neck to his whole body almost made him faint, and he roared at Orochimaru angrily. One day, I will tear you to pieces. Orochimaru looked at Uchiha Sasuke with a smile. As the creator of Curse of Heaven, he naturally knew the horror of this curse better than anyone else. As long as Uchiha Sasuke wants to control this power, he will definitely come to him. You want to tear me to pieces with this level of power? Ridiculous, ignorance has a limit. Living in a peaceful village like Konoha, you will never become as strong as your two brothers. Uchiha Sasuke, you are too stupid. Orochimaru didn't hesitate to attack Sasuke. If it weren't for Uchiha Sasuke's body, he would definitely obliterate this annoying arrogant insect in an instant. Ouch! A ferocious roar exploded in the sky, and a blazing airwave spread out like a cannonball, surging to every corner of the sky. Suddenly looking up, it was Uzumaki Naruto who swooped down fiercely. Due to the fact that the force was too strong, the airwaves that were thrown out caused the ground to collapse. What a haunting little brat. Orochimaru quickly retracted his neck and looked at Naruto with uncertainty. He immediately noticed that Konoha's ninjas were getting closer and closer. His heart inevitably calmed down. No matter how hard he fought, he couldn't escape from Konoha's group attack, especially with the Kyuubi. Goodbye, Sarutobi-sensei, the next time we meet, it will be your death. Orochimaru viciously looked at the ninja galloping from the distance. His murderous aura was overflowing. His kindness to the Sandaime has disappeared since the moment he betrayed Konoha, and now he hates him even more, and he can't wait to get rid of him. And you! His eyes fell on Uzumaki Naruto again. Orochimaru looked at him deeply and quickly disappeared. After all, Konoha's ninjas are not to be trifled with, and there are extraordinary masters among them. Stupid Orochimaru, I really don't know where your strong confidence comes from, but do you think you still have a chance? Staring at Orochimaru's voice, Dustless's mouth curled into a cold smile, then looked at Uzumaki Naruto, and printed with one hand again. Senjutsu, Bright God Gate. In Uzumaki Naruto's spiritual world, a red round piece of wood fell from the sky. Kyuubi, who thought that he was going to break out of the prison, was not happy for long, but he was suppressed here. As for the projection left by Wuxia in Uzumaki Naruto's spiritual world many years ago, it disappeared because of the exhaustion of chakra. It seems that it's time to catch that girl. His right eye suddenly turned blue, and Dustless's sight swept in all directions. The insight of the Tenseigan is much stronger than the Byakugan. The situation within a radius of 10 kilometers was exposed to Dustless's eyes. The penetration ability of the Tenseigan is extremely strong, and the world in Dustless's sight is almost a plane, without any obstacles. It seems that I found her. Staring straight ahead, Dustless's body suddenly burst out, and the golden rainbow cut through the void. The speed was so fast that it was difficult to catch, and it was almost instantaneous. However, Hyuga Hinata and others seem to be in trouble. It seems that they are fighting with Gaara of the Sand-Hidden Village, and they are almost at a disadvantage. Chapter 210. Sandaime looked at Dustless with a heavy expression. He never felt that the person in front of him was so far away, so untouchable. Even if the two of them were close to each other, Sandaime couldn't help but feel a sense of distance in his heart. This is not a visual gap, but a difference in the nature of the soul. At the same time, Dustless's soul returned to his body, and the Shinigami's hand was also absorbed by Dustless. What kind of freak is this guy? He actually swallowed the Shinigami? Sandaime's eyes widened as he looked at Dustless's stomach in disbelief. He just saw with his own eyes that the Shinigami was absorbed into Dustless's body. It's just so. Dustless opened his eyes and looked at Sandaime's surprised face and said with a chuckle, "There's no need to be so surprised. I have too many abilities at the same time with the Sharingan. I have countless ways to kill the Shinigami," Wuxia said. Sandaime Hokage's strongest Fuinjutsu did not have any effect on him. The destruction of the Uchiha clan was actually instigated by you. Sure enough, I guessed that after Shirsue's disappearance, Uchiha's ambitious and blazing heart would calm down. Sandaime laughed bitterly, regretting that if he didn't order Itachi to slaughter the entire Uchiha clan, maybe the two sides would have reconciled. Yes, the destruction of the Uchiha clan is indeed related to me. Thinking back to the events of the past few years, Sandaime said faintly, when the Uchiha clan gathered at the Naka Shrine, Uchiha Shirsue was also there, and Uchiha Fugaku also announced the declaration of capturing the Hokage of Konoha, but due to some unexpected changes, there was a small episode on the way. Dustless's eyes were cold, and his voice was gloomy as he said coldly. Uchiha Shirsue actually used the Kodo Amatsukami on Uchiha Fugaku and permanently changed his will. I really didn't expect this. The plan couldn't keep up with the changes, although Dustless had long expected that things wouldn't develop according to his plan. He still didn't expect Shirsue to use the Kodo Amatsukami on Uchiha Fugaku. In this aspect, he is very similar to your decisive style in handling matters. You can also be considered as his teacher. Noticing that Sandaime's vitality was fading away, Sandaime's tone was obviously a lot lower. It's a pity that the Uchiha's clan was destroyed, or he was confused because he saw the end of Konoha. So what? He wanted to use Genjutsu to change history, but he could only be ruthlessly crushed by the gears of time. Later, I decided to take his Sharingan and turn Uchiha Fugaku's will back into his former ambitious self, so they would still live in the script I designed for them. Even if it happened a few years ago, Dustless's heart was still in a daze. But that kid knew that he wasn't my opponent, so he destroyed his Manjikyu Sharingan, so I used the Izanagi to seal his eyes to help Uchiha Fugaku change it back. It took me a lot of effort. Hearing this, Sandaime looked at Dustless with a sneer, and said contemptuously, "You only have yourself to blame, you can't blame others." Sandaime didn't hesitate to attack, but he soon realized that something was wrong. If it was really as Dustless said, then why are his eyes intact now? But I'm really sorry, I used the power of the Sharingan to control Uchiha Kagami, and used his Manjikyu Sharingan to launch the Izanagi Jutsu, but after that, I deliberately used Amaterasu to erase Shirsue in front of Itachi, so that Itachi could open the Manjikyu Sharingan. Then I invaded Uzumaki Naruto's spiritual world, released the Kyuubi seal in his body, and used the power of the Sharingan to control him, and then he released the power of the Kyuubi to destroy Konoha. Of course the focus was on Danzo's root, which also caused Danzo to hate the Uchiha. Wu Chen spoke with fervor and assurance. He maintained his composure from beginning to end. His deep eyes were like the bone-chilling seawater under the deep sea, filled with darkness and haze. There was no emotional fluctuation that a human should have. Combined with his cold voice, it gave people a feeling of extreme coldness. Including this Chunin exam incident, it was also planned by me. Including the Hokage's corpse in Orochimaru's hands, it was also transferred to him by me. Thinking of Orochimaru, Dustless's eyes flashed with a sneer. What's your purpose, and what's the benefit of doing this? Although the old voice was filled with endless anger, it also sounded decadent, vicissitudes of life and powerlessness. It was obvious that he had reached the end of his life. Even if I tell you in detail, you won't understand what my purpose is. Dustless glanced at Sandaime faintly. Seeing that he was about to completely disappear, he didn't answer his question, but simply turned and left. Even if he told Sandaime the facts about the Jubi, he wouldn't understand. The old antiques of the previous era indulged in the illusion of peace and have completely lost their ambition. Even if Dustless told him the origin of the Jubi, Sandaime may not be able to understand. Watching Dustless leave with his dirty old eyes, Sandaime finally closed his eyes. The Sandaime, who used to be the most powerful Hokage in the world, has completely disappeared, and his soul has returned to the sky. At the same time, in the other direction, the battle between Jiraiya and Orochimaru also began. Both of them were part of the Sannin, and their strength was equally matched, belonging to the same level, and they were also caught in a protracted battle. After Uchiha Itachi and Kisame noticed the Hachibi for the first time, they immediately came to support. Uchiha Itachi, who had the Manjikyu Sharingan, was the natural enemy of the Bijou, and Kisame alone led the support of Konoha's ninjas, and soon tamed the Hachibi. Chapter 211. Dustless left quietly. Naturally, no one knew that he was the one behind the scenes. Of course, it doesn't rule out that some people knew, but they were killed by Dustless. Uzumaki Naruto once again used Kyuubi chakra, like a rock falling into the calm water, stirring up monstrous ripples, and even the Chunin exam stopped. The Sandaime, who learned what happened, couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. At least, Uzumaki Naruto didn't hurt his own people this time. After all, the enemy Orochimaru is one of the Sannin, powerful and vicious. It's understandable that Uzumaki Naruto used Kyuubi's chakra. No one blamed Uzumaki Naruto, but they were still burned by Kyuubi's destructive power. Almost half of the Chunin exam's forest of death was wiped out. However, it didn't take long for Hinata to be killed by Gaara of the sand-hidden village to ravage Konoha like a hurricane. The patriarch of the Hyuga clan, Hayashi, immediately threatened that he wouldn't give up and vowed to kill Gaara of the sand-hidden village to avenge his beloved daughter. Hayashi, I know you're unwilling, but this Chunin exam is up to fate. Victory or defeat depends on oneself. I'm also very sad about Hinata's death. In the residential area of the Hyuga clan, the third Hokage looked at the furious Hyuga Hayashi with a wry smile and sighed silently. Although Hyuga Hayashi usually acts indifferent to Hinata, he actually cares about his daughter very much. It's just that he hides the fatherly love deep in his heart without leaving a trace. If it was Asuma who was killed this time, what would you do? Hayashi stared gloomily at the Sandaime, suppressing the raging fire in his heart, and asked in a hoarse voice. The Sandaime is the leader of Konoha. At the very least, he should respect him. If it was someone else who said that to him, Hayashi would have already killed him. The Sandaime was speechless. If it was his son, Asuma, who was killed, maybe he would also go all out against the other side. Everyone knows that blood is thicker than water. Why aren't you talking? Seeing Sandaime's silence, Hayashi sneered and said coldly, Gaara of the sand-hidden village, does he think that I won't dare to kill him just because he is the son of the Kazekage? This time, I will teach him a lesson. Hyuga Hayashi's murderous intent was boiling, the entire hall was filled with gloomy coldness, thousands of ghosts screamed, and the invisible chill that swept through was particularly gloomy and terrifying. The Sandaime frowned. He sympathized with Hyuga Hayashi, and he also saw the Hyuga clan's decades of hard work for Konoha. However, he still firmly disagreed with killing Gaara. This may directly push the sand-hidden village and Konoha to the fuse of war. But Hyuga Hayashi's radical attitude clearly left no room for retreat. How troublesome. Lowering his head and thinking silently, the Sandaime's eyes kept changing. Hyuga Hinata was killed because she was weak, because this Chunin exam was a disguised killing event. Gaara's ruthlessness wasn't his fault, because Konoha's ninjas in the Forest of Death also killed and robbed the opponent's scroll. This old man, my Hyuga clan has worked hard for Konoha's attack for decades in vain, but now we are not as important as a mere sand-hidden village kid. The corner of his eyes vaguely looked at the Sandaime. Hayashi's face was expressionless, but his heart was cold. The Hyuga clan's contribution to Konoha was known to the world. In the 3 Shinobi World Wars, the Hyuga clan's ninjas sacrificed their lives for Konoha. But now, they are not worthy of the sand-hidden village's tailed beast. Hayashi suddenly remembered the Uchiha that had already been cooked, and he felt cold all over. Perhaps the Hyuga clan was born with evil intentions, and the Uchiha's fate was a true portrayal of them. In fact, Hayashi also knew that he was being unreasonable. The ninja exam was so cruel. He also came from the bottom. In the Chunin exam, he also killed ninjas from other villages and took their scrolls. Later, after a series of assessments, he was successfully promoted to Chunin. Hayashi was secretly testing the Sandaime. He wanted to see how much weight the Hyuga clan had in this old guy's heart. After all, with the Uchiha as a precedent, it was inevitable that he would be vigilant in times of peace. The Hyuga clan's contribution to Konoha was known to all. He originally had great expectations and hopes. The Hyuga clan's loyalty to Konoha was known to the world for decades. According to his guess, the Sandaime should not hesitate to agree to kill Gaara. But now it seems that he took it for granted. Sorry, Hayashi, I can't agree to your conditions. This will push the village in the direction of war. I hope you can focus on the overall situation. After pondering for a while, the Sandaime said decisively. Konoha has always been the enemy of the major ninja villages. After several wars and the destruction of the Kyuubi, the village's combat power recovered quickly, but it's not as good as before. If there is a war with the Sand now, the best situation is for the other 3 villages to watch from the sidelines. It's not impossible for them to help the sand to swallow Konoha together. This was the case in the previous wars. In that case, I will respect the choice of the Sandaime. I can rest assured that the hatred is temporary, but the Hyuga clan will never let that kid go. He took a deep look at the Sandaime, and the corner of his mouth raised a self-deprecating smile. His heart was full of despair. The Hyuga clan's decades of sacrifice were not worth mentioning. If one were to compare it to the heavens, one side would be the Hyuga, and the other side would be the war. The peaceful Sandaime Hokage would probably send the Hyuga clan to hell, because the current situation of Konoha simply couldn't afford a war. At the same time, Hayashi also realized the decay of Konoha, and his heart inevitably began to become active. Staying in such a village, maybe one day he will start to plan a new way for the Hyuga clan, just like the Uchiha. Chapter 2:12. Sandaime Hokage was silent. Looking at the expressionless Hyuga Hayashi, he could only shake his head and smile bitterly. He knew that at this moment, Hyuga Hayashi was estranged from Konoha and even hated it. My condolences, Hayashi. After that, Sandaime Hokage turned and left. His short and hunchbacked figure was even more unbearable at this moment. Perhaps he had already seen the end of Konoha. Konoha was the most prosperous ninja village, but to some extent, it was also the darkest ninja village. Perhaps it was the darkness that caused Konoha's prosperity. People are emotional creatures. In the face of an unprecedented situation, it's inevitable that they would overthink. At this moment, Hyuga Hayashi's mind began to become active. Konoha is not a place where my clan can live for a long time. Closing his eyes in despair, Hyuga Hayashi's heart had already given up on Konoha. When he opened his eyes again, his whole person was extremely awe-inspiring. The death of Hinata didn't shock her father the most. The one who reacted the most intensely was undoubtedly Uzumaki Naruto. However, in the face of power, Uzumaki Naruto's unhappiness was quickly suppressed. As Hinata's father, Hyuga Hayashi couldn't do anything, let alone Uzumaki Naruto, who had no right to speak. Uzumaki Naruto could only secretly swear that he would teach Gaara a lesson. Among them, Uchiha Sasuke was the most unbalanced. Uzumaki Naruto, who he looked down on the most, showed a strength that could destroy the world. He could even fight and even suppress a strong person like Orochimaru. This scene was deeply imprinted in his heart. The words that Orochimaru said to him before he left also lingered in Sasuke's heart. He could also feel the power of the curse of heaven, given to him by Orochimaru. Sasuke's heart was also shaken. Indeed, as Orochimaru said, Konoha was in a peaceful world, and he couldn't obtain powerful strength. During this period, Sasuke also learned Chidori from Kakashi. Naruto also practiced with Jiraiya, one of the Sannin, for a while. His strength was also increasing rapidly. All in all, the Chunin exam was stirred up by Dustless, and the situation suddenly went downhill sharply. It was different from the previous Chunin exam. Sandaime Hokage could only secretly hate Orochimaru. If Orochimaru didn't cause trouble, the situation wouldn't be so bad. Despite this, the Chunin exam will continue. All the ninjas who survived in the Forest of Death will advance to the next exam, which will be the third exam. At that time, the third Hokage and the fourth Kazekage will personally watch. Naruto's, Hyuga, Hinata's brother, Hyuga. Shinobi, Hyuga Hinata's brother Hyuga Neji. Naruto Shikamaru also lost to Temari because of chakra. Kankuro deliberately abstained to preserve his strength. Now, this is the final match of the Chunin exam, Uchiha Sasuke vs Gaara of the Sand Village. This is really the last match to watch. Hokage-sama. On a tall building in the distance, Sandaime Hokage and 4th Kazekage could be seen overlooking the competition below. 4th Kazekage turned his head and said to Sandaime Hokage. Yondaime Kazekage's face was covered, and it was impossible to see his face clearly. His whole body gave people a cold feeling, especially his eyes, which were particularly strange. Indeed, it's a battle between geniuses. Sandaime Hokage nodded, and at the same time, he carefully looked at 4th Kazekage from the corner of his eyes. He didn't know why, but he always felt a sense of oppression, as if he was being stared at by a beast, making him uncomfortable. Old man, Today is the day you die. With a ferocious smile, 4th Kazekage secretly thought. In fact, the current 4th Kazekage was assassinated by Orochimaru a few days ago. The current Kazekage was just Orochimaru's disguise. Orochimaru's hatred towards Sandaime Hokage was understandable. Originally, this old guy always thought that the position under Sandaime Hokage's was his, but Namake's Minato beat him to it. The relationship between the master and apprentice was inevitably estranged, and later, his human experiment plan was discovered, and he finally embarked on the road of defection. While Orochimaru was planning how to destroy Sandaime Hokage, he didn't know that there were 3 figures watching the battle in the dark. Oh, you two are in a good mood. Coming to watch children fight. Under the cool shade of the tree, 3 figures were clearly visible, wearing black trench coats embroidered with red clouds, wearing ninja headbands with a mark on their heads, and dressed strangely. Leader asked me and Itachi to come to Konoha to investigate, to prepare for the capture of Kyuubi and Ichibi in the future. The shark-faced man looked at Dustless, and Kisame said bluntly. He didn't expect Dustless to be in Konoha's ninja village, and he and Itachi didn't hide their mission. Of course, it's also good to have a chance to kill Orochimaru. Kisame sneered at Orochimaru, who pretended to be 4th Kazekage. When he ambushed 4th Kazekage, Zetsu and Dustless were there, and naturally knew his plan. I'm curious what you're doing here. Itachi glanced at Dustless faintly, and his eyes fell on Uchiha Sasuke. His eyes flashed with a faint luster, and he seemed surprised by his current strength. Me. Of course, I'm taking back the things I gave to Orochimaru. I lent them to him for so long, and it's time to take them back. Looking at Orochimaru in the distance, Dustless's tone was slightly strange. Dustless's inexplicable words suddenly attracted Itachi and Kisame's attention, and they couldn't understand what he meant. They just looked indifferently at the battlefield in the distance. After all, it's a duel between a genius and a Jinchuriki, and it's also a good show that can't be missed. Orochimaru, you'd better hand over the corpses of the Hokage after this, otherwise... Humph. With a cold snort, the killing intent in his eyes disappeared. Dustless also retracted his gaze and stared at the battle in the distance with interest. Chapter 213. The majestic and infinite perception spread out. Dustless could clearly perceive that outside Konoha's ninja village, there were many Sand Ninja and Otogekyure Ninja led by Orochimaru lurking in the dark, waiting for the opportunity. Worthy of being the younger brother of Itachi and Dustless. He's not bad at all against the Sand Village's Jinchuriki, and he even has the upper hand. Kisame's pupils dilated as he looked at Uchiha Sasuke in surprise. He couldn't help but sigh. Uchiha Fugaku and Uchiha Mikoto's powerful genes. Dustless and Itachi's strength is known all over the world. Now, this young brother is also showing his edge. These 3 brothers will probably stand at the top of the pyramid in the future. Sasuke has a good sensei, and he also has a heart that knows how to improve. Thanks to you, Itachi. Looking at Uchiha Itachi with a smile, Dustless said sarcastically. His tone gave people a feeling of gloating, as if he was happy that Uchiha Sasuke was so crazy. Dustless's gloating look made Kisame next to him shudder unconsciously. It seems that there is indeed some problem with the genes of this family. Kisame secretly muttered. The strength of these 3 brothers is beyond doubt. Uchiha Sasuke's potential is also not small. He may not be as good as Dustless and Itachi now, but he will definitely be in the future. However, the temperament of the 3 brothers is completely opposite. Dustless gives people the strangest feeling. He does almost everything according to his heart, and he is not bound. It seems that he just wants to have fun. No one knows what his purpose is. Uchiha Itachi gave people the impression that he was thoughtful and gentle. In fact, he was a person who was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. As for Uchiha Sasuke, he was too obvious. He was arrogant and conceited, but at the same time, he did things flawlessly. He could observe the details that ordinary people ignored. Weird family. Kisame shook his head. He really didn't know that the personalities of the 3 brothers were so different. Thanks to me? That is indeed the case. Uchiha Itachi didn't deny it and nodded thoughtfully. Sasuke's current appearance was indeed caused by him, and then he looked at Dustless. So-called brothers are just accessories for each other. Isn't that what you said before? Dustless curled his lips when he heard this. He knew what Uchiha Itachi was thinking, and he was too lazy to talk nonsense. After all, no one can stop him if he is willing to be a part of Uchiha Sasuke. Kisame was confused. He didn't know what Itachi meant by accessories, and he didn't want to talk about it. For him, watching the fight in front of him was more interesting. Bang! In the middle of the arena, Gaara was punched by Uchiha Sasuke. His body flew out like a broken kite. He was so weak that he slammed into the wall, causing many cracks. Uchiha Sasuke's speed was extremely fast. He once used Sharingan to copy Lee Luaku's taijutsu and trained it himself. His speed was no worse than Lee Luaku's, a taijutsu expert. Gaara's sand couldn't react at all. His speed was not proportional to Uchiha Sasuke's. Under absolute speed, he could only passively take a beating. What an amazing boy. I must get you and then take revenge on that man. Orochimaru, who was disguised as the fourth Kazekage, looked down at Sasuke, who almost beat Gaara without any power to fight back. The more he looked, the more satisfied he was. Being killed by your own brother, this way of death is very suitable for you, Itachi. Orochimaru secretly thought with a strange and gloomy smile on his face. It seemed that he was attracted by the invisible evil aura emanating from Orochimaru, and the third Hokage's gaze was also cast over. Is it my illusion? The third Hokage frowned deeply, and the Chuan character on his forehead was clearly visible. This evil feeling made him feel a sense of déjà vu. Damn guy! Gaara slowly stood up and stared at Uchiha Sasuke ferociously. He was like a dying beast, and hysterically said with hatred, "Killing a guy like you should make my presence known." After that, the sand layers around Gaara began to converge, forming a giant sphere that tightly protected him. There was also an eye of the sand floating in the sky, obviously used for reconnaissance. Whoosh! A sharp sound rang, and a hazy black shadow whizzed out like a rushing lightning. In just an instant, it rushed to the front of the sphere and punched with all its strength. Boom! The round high-density sand sphere trembled fiercely, splashing some dust, and then some red blood flowed out from the surface. Damn, it's so hard. He quickly pulled back a distance. If he didn't destroy this thick tortoise shell, he wouldn't be able to touch Gaara. Uchiha Sasuke's heart sank slightly. His arm was numb from the shock, and the bloodstains just now were also left by him. Gaara, who was now in absolute defense, was almost invincible to Uchiha Sasuke. It seems that I can only use that. His hesitation was quickly replaced by determination. The light in Uchiha Sasuke's eyes disappeared in a flash, and a dazzling light of thunder appeared in his hand. An ear-piercing roar resounded continuously, as if thousands of birds were chirping at the same time. The sharp sound resounded through the sky, making people's scalp numb. Looking at it, Uchiha Sasuke's hand was wrapped in a silver light, and the terrifying power of the thorns on it was even more chilling. It seemed that it could penetrate everything. Silver substantialized chakra. Sure enough, it's Chidori. Dustless didn't have the slightest surprise. The creator of this technique was Kakashi, but it was Uchiha Sasuke who really exerted it to the limit. Under the surprised gaze of countless people, Uchiha Sasuke and Chidori in his hand rushed toward Gaara at full speed. Chapter 214. The conditions for learning Chidori are extremely harsh, and the physical requirements have reached the limit. It's undoubtedly Chidori, but it should be Kakashi's jutsu. I didn't expect him to teach it to Sasuke. It seems that their relationship is not a simple mentor relationship. Uchiha Itachi, who remained calm from beginning to end, said with a little surprise. For a ninja like Kakashi, who has no Kekkei Genkai, the rare and precious jutsu Chidori, can be left for future generations, and there's no need to give it to an outsider like Sasuke. It's not difficult to see that Uchiha Sasuke and Kakashi are still very compatible, and their relationship is quite good. Uchiha Itachi's fluctuating heart also relaxed. Konoha is surrounded by strong enemies, and with Kakashi's support, Uchiha Sasuke can be regarded as a safety guarantee. Hum! The harsh roar resounded through the sky, and the sharp screams made the tens of thousands of spectators who watched the Chunin exam tremble. Their hearts were abnormally throbbing as they looked at the substantialized chakra in Uchiha Sasuke's assistant heart. Even if there are many ordinary civilians among them, they can also feel the tense atmosphere at the scene. The onlookers took a deep breath and looked at Uchiha Sasuke with rapt attention. Or rather, they looked at the lightning in his hand that pulled a long and narrow crack on the ground. They couldn't help but sweat for Gaara in absolute defense. The dazzling lightning contained a sharpness that penetrated everything, and everyone could feel it. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, Uchiha Sasuke burst out like a berserk beast. His speed was extremely fast, and his whole person was like a flash bathed in lightning, extremely dazzling. He almost instantly came to Gaara's side. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! Gaara's exposed sand eye obviously detected Uchiha Sasuke, and countless sand spikes immediately extended from the sand sphere that wrapped him, stabbing at Uchiha Sasuke, trying to prevent him from touching him. Insignificant skill. I will defeat you today. Easily avoiding the spikes, Uchiha Sasuke sneered again and again, his expression wild and proud. In his opinion, the reason why Gaara stopped him from approaching him was a sign of fear. An unruly expression appeared on his young face. The silver light in his hand was like an electromagnetic field, gathering a large amount of thunder and lightning. Crackling sounds could be heard as the silver light pierced toward the round sandball without hesitation. Poochie! The sharp lightning immediately pierced through it, splashing countless gravel, and a lot of soil fell to the ground. This is lightning. Inside the absolute defense, Gaara looked at the subtle silver luster, and an unprecedented sense of danger arose spontaneously. His eyes flashed with a rare color of fear. Gazing at the oncoming Chidori, Gaara was enveloped by the scattered lightning, causing his skin to ache. He could feel the danger and extraordinariness of the lightning. I have to dodge. At the critical moment, Gaara instinctively avoided Chidori's attack and avoided the most important chest position, which was why he survived. Poochie! In the dark space inside the absolute defense, a dazzling blood flower suddenly appeared in midair, and a violent tingling sensation suddenly spread all over his body. Gaara was stunned at first, and then he stared blankly at his pierced shoulder. Wiping the bloody wound, this seems to be the first time in his life that Gaara was beaten like this. Damn it, did he dodge it? Seeing that his attack didn't kill Gaara, Uchiha Sasuke cursed and immediately retreated. Chidori is a very powerful ninjutsu, but it requires a huge amount of chakra to maintain. He is still young and doesn't have so much chakra, and he has enough energy for him to squander. It actually hurt that Jinchuriki, but fortunately he didn't kill him. If he died we would be in trouble. Kisame immediately saw Gaara's shoulder pierced by Chidori. Although it was a pity, he was relieved. If Jinchuriki died, Akatsuki would also be very troubled. No matter what, he is still our brother. Naturally, he can't be that bad. Looking faintly at the bloody Gaara, Dustless said calmly. At the same time, he looked at Orochimaru and frowned. The more powerful Uchiha Sasuke is, the more Orochimaru will yearn for Sharingan and Uchiha Sasuke's body. Sasuke also chases after power, and Orochimaru can make him stronger. The two of them are naturally dry wood meeting fire. Uchiha Sasuke's defection can't be stopped. His character determines everything. Even if Orochimaru is the incarnation of the devil, Uchiha Sasuke, who pursues absolute power, will choose to collude with Orochimaru. A woo! The sound of the beast's roar resounded through the sky, and a strong murderous aura and disaster descended. The hysterical roar made Uchiha Sasuke's soul tremble. Staring at Gaara with saliva in the corner of his mouth, he subconsciously took a step back. There's something wrong with this chakra. Although it's still in his body, it's completely different from before. It's similar to Naruto that day, but it's not as evil as Naruto's chakra. Holding the dagger and looking at Gaara cautiously, Uchiha Sasuke secretly thought. He couldn't help but think of Uzumaki Naruto's violent suppression of Orochimaru a few days ago. The chakra in front of him is similar to Naruto's a few days ago. Even if it's not as dense as Uzumaki Naruto, it can still crush Uchiha Sasuke. It seems that there's something terrible in their bodies. Gaara's eyes were bloodshot and messy like a spider web. There was some saliva in the corner of his mouth, and his eyeballs bulged out horribly as if they were about to fall out. It was particularly terrifying. Good opportunity. Sasuke's pupils suddenly shrank. With his Sharingan, Uchiha Sasuke's insight was naturally powerful. Just now, he easily captured the weakness of Gaara's inner body due to excessive anger. Chapter 2:15. The Sharingan's ability to capture movement is extremely strong. If the Byakugan is an eye born for detection, then the Sharingan is an evil eye born for killing. Even the slightest loophole cannot escape from the Sharingan. Gaara, who was in a berserk state, was full of loopholes under Sharingan's observation. Whoosh! The sound of breaking air came, and a black hazy shadow rushed straight. The sharp cold light was obvious. It was Uchiha Sasuke with a cold face using his speed above Gaara. Little did he know that Gaara had already expected this result, and a cold smile appeared on his face. There should be a limit to your ignorance. No matter what, Gaara is still a Jinchuriki of a chibi. Even if he is the weakest of the Bijou, his strength is not something a little brat like you can handle. Sitting side by side with the Sandaime, the fourth Kazekage, Orochimaru, shook his head secretly. Uchiha Sasuke's talent and effort are indisputable, but he is too arrogant and conceited. Even if a chibi's Jinchuriki is weak, he is still a Jinchuriki. Whoosh! The cold light came head-on like an arrow, whistling straight toward Gaara. It looked like it was going to pierce his head. Ah! The roar of the beast came out of Gaara's throat again. The hoarse roar carried endless impact, and the spreading wave directly shook the oncoming dagger away. What a powerful force! Uchiha Sasuke's pupils suddenly shrank, and the impact of Shikaku's killing intent passed through him. His forehead was covered with cold sweat. Staring at Gaara, Uchiha Sasuke's throat choked uncontrollably, and the cold murderous aura around him made his body tremble. It was a fear that came from the depths of his fate. That kid can still feel fear. It seems that the game is over. With a smile on his face, Sandaime Hokage's face was full of enjoyment, and then he looked at the fearful Uchiha Sasuke, as if he saw something incredible, and his old eyes were full of surprise. It's not a bad thing to let this fearless kid eat bones. The dry and white lips grinned, and the Sandaime secretly calculated. After all, Uchiha Sasuke has been smooth since he became a ninja. Compared to Uzumaki Naruto, his strength has improved rapidly under the influence of hatred. Hokage-sama, you don't have time to worry about others now. It's better to look at your current situation. As soon as the hoarse voice with killing intent fell, a dark dagger was placed on the Sandaime's throat, and the Sandaime's neck was bound. The one who attacked the Sandaime Hokage was Orochimaru, disguised as the Sandaime Kazekage. At the same time, countless feather-like objects fell from the void. The audience watching the Chunin exam fainted, including Uzumaki Naruto and Nara Shikamaru, who had poor resistance to genjutsu. In the periphery of Konoha's ninja village, the lurking Otoge Cure and Sand Ninja took the opportunity to use summoning jutsu to summon a lot of thick snakes to attack Konoha. Kazekage-sama, you should understand what this means. Triggering a war between the two sides won't do any good to the Sand Village. This old man advises you to stop, otherwise, you will have to bear the consequences. The Sandaime glanced at the fourth Kazekage behind him, and said in a deep voice, "If I can destroy Konoha, I don't care if there is a war, not to mention this has nothing to do with me. It's been so long. Have you forgotten what I said to you, Sarutobi-sensei?" Yondaime Kazekage's voice suddenly changed, as if his throat was blocked. His voice became extremely hoarse, and his tone was like a poisonous snake, full of coldness. "Sure enough, it's you, Orochimaru." His body suddenly aged a few decades, and the third Hokage smiled self-deprecatingly. It can be said that Konoha's prosperity was in the hands of Orochimaru, and at the same time, its destruction was also in his hands. I once told you that you should determine the fifth Hokage as soon as possible, but now it seems to be too late. Orochimaru licked the sharp dagger in his hand, and the cold light on it became clearer, and the refracted light seemed to be able to pierce the eyes of human beings. Too late? Who told you that? With a sneer, the third Hokage's pupils emitted a cold killing intent, and chakra burst out of his body, and he said with hatred, "It's not too late to kill you." Today, even if the third Hokage was pedantic and ignorant, he knew that this once most trusted disciple must be eradicated, and it must be done by him. Konoha's situation at the moment was also a mess. Giant snakes constantly broke through the defense and penetrated into the interior of Konoha, and the situation was almost one-sided. When Gaara in the center of the field was about to completely kill Uchiha Sasuke, his head suddenly became dizzy, and his body was uncontrollably shaking. Good opportunity. Uchiha Sasuke saw this and suddenly rushed forward, intending to completely kill Gaara. But a tall shadow suddenly rushed in front of Gaara and easily kicked Uchiha Sasuke away. It was the Sand Village's Jonin Maki and Gaara's brother and sister. As the referee of the examination room, Gunma also immediately stood in front of Sasuke, secretly observing the surrounding environment. Obviously, this so-called Chunin exam has been replaced by actual combat. It seems that your Sand Village has been plotting for a long time. This will trigger a war between the two villages. Gunma, who stood in front of Uchiha Sasuke, asked angrily. Konoha was caught off guard, and without thinking, they knew that the loss must be great. Take Gaara away. He is the village's precious fighting force. Maki ignored omniscient fire Gunma and ordered Temari and Kankuro. The two looked at each other and tactfully took Gaara away from this troublesome place. Chapter 2:16. Time flew by like an arrow, and a few days passed by in the blink of an eye. After a series of difficult persuasion from Jiraiya and Uzumaki Naruto, Tsunade's group was finally appointed as the 5th Hokage. Later, Uchiha Sasuke realized that his strength was not as good as Uzumaki Naruto, and he was jealous. If he continued to be free, he would have no hope of revenge in his life. Finally, he remembered the cursed seal power left in his body by Orochimaru, and resolutely chose to go on the road of betrayal. During this period, Konoha's ninja sent Uzumaki Naruto and others to chase Uchiha Sasuke. However, they were blocked by Otoge-cure. Only Uzumaki Naruto barely caught up with Uchiha Sasuke. The two launched an unprecedented battle in the Valley of the End, but it ended with Uchiha Sasuke's victory. It announced the failure of Konoha's plan. Uzumaki Naruto, who was in pain, realized that the gap between him and Uchiha Sasuke was still big. He made up his mind to train hard with Jiraiya for 2 years. After learning about Jiraiya and Uzumaki Naruto, Dustless of the rain-hidden village breathed a sigh of relief. The rock that had been in his heart was finally settled. He just had to wait quietly for everything to start 2 years later. But obviously, some people didn't want Dustless to live so leisurely. I didn't expect that you two could go together. Speechlessly looking at the two stunning beauties who were chatting happily, Wu Chen had a headache. He never thought that these two people who had nothing to do with each other could come together. It seemed that they were familiar with each other and had a heart-to-heart talk. Did you two take the wrong script? The beauties were Konan and Otsutsuki Haguro. During the time when Dustless was away, the two women were very close to each other. Compared with Dustless, who had been teammates for many years, Konan's relationship with Otsutsuki Haguro was more harmonious and appropriate. Pain has a task for us. Seeing that Dustless had arrived, Xiao Nan's expression immediately changed. Her beautiful face once again returned to its indifferent expression. She chose to frown at him coldly. Her small face turned into an unapproachable expression. Seeing that Dustless seemed to have seen an enemy, he was immediately petrified. Otsutsuki Hagoromo also left. After all, she was not a member of the Akatsuki organization, and she was too lazy to participate in those bloody and boring things. It would be more comfortable to communicate with Hinata or guide Honrin. Mission. Looking at Xiao Nan suspiciously, Dustless couldn't help but frown. There shouldn't be any missions during this period of time, especially a mission that Xiao Nan personally came to find him for. The Akatsuki naturally accepts missions from the outside world. Ordinary missions can be handed over to the ordinary ninjas of the Rain Village. As for some S-level missions, even super S-level missions can only be handed over to us. Konan said indifferently. This is interesting. There is actually a mission that can use both of us. I'm curious about the origin of the other party. Dustless nodded. The most powerful member of the Akatsuki organization was the Oracle combination formed by him and Konan. The mission that can use both of them is definitely a super S-level mission. In the dim candlelight room, a ghost-like figure with orange hair could be vaguely seen. Even if it stood up, there were no signs of life. It was no different from a puppet. There were a number of dense black iron rods inserted all over the body. It looked scary, adding a lot of gloominess and strangeness. It was Pain, And the two figures standing beside him were naturally Conan and Dustless. The construction of the Rain Village cost a lot of money. The money saved in the organization is all used to buy various materials and necessary living materials. Now there is a hole in the capital flow, and a lot of money is needed to fill it. Payne said coldly. Due to the previous Second Shinobi World War, the Rain Village has been shattered and disintegrated. As the center of the war between the three major countries, the Rain Village is almost in a miserable state of anarchy, allowing the ninjas of other major countries to wreak havoc. In other words, staring at Dustless and Conan, Payne said faintly, the organization has no money, and needs you to perform tasks to earn money. Hearing this, Dustless smiled bitterly. Apart from the missions that they had to do, most of the rest of the time they were working to earn extra money. What is the mission this time? Shaking his head, Dustless was too lazy to talk nonsense. Remembering Conan's cautiousness when she looked for him, Dustless asked with interest. This mission was obviously unusual. Yomi of the Land of Demons is trying to unlock the seal of Morio, and your two missions are to kill him. His eyes looked indifferently at the void in front of him, Payne said indifferently. His tone was simple and concise. The meaning revealed was that Yomi was no different from a worm, and it was not worth him saying more. As for Morio, Payne's tone was silent. In fact, he had never seen Morio himself, but there were rumors that this prehistoric monster almost destroyed the world in the past. Be careful as much as possible, that Morio is not an ordinary thing. Staring at Conan, Payne said seriously. As for Dustless, he directly ignored him. In his opinion, this kid has a lot of means to escape, especially that exaggerated speed. Worrying about him is better than worrying about whether the Land of Demons has the ability to pay the funds after the completion of the mission. Isn't Morio resurrected 2 years later? Doubts emerged in his heart. Dustless was speechless. He didn't expect that the wind from his butterfly wings was so big that even Morio, a prehistoric monster, came out of the cage 2 years in advance. Since the risk is so great, then why don't we give up this mission? Conan frowned. Although the Akatsuki are desperate, this kind of mission is too dangerous and can be completely rejected. For world peace, we must organize Morio and Yomi. Glancing faintly, Payne's tone was resolute. If Morio is resurrected, the whole world will be unlucky, and the Akatsuki will also be unlucky. You are really great. The corner of his mouth twitched without a trace. Dustless's heart was filled with hundreds of thousands of grass-mud horses, and he understood a little more about Uzumaki Nagato's heart. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.